I remember going to that really great liquor store in Grand Rapids because it was the only place that still sold the cocaine energy drink.
Oh, the one over in like
Rishi's.
Yeah, that place fucking rules.
Wait, it's not for Loco?
This was cocaine. It was just called cocaine.
Oh, okay.
It was because Josh's and my friend Corby was like, I want to go get cocaine, the energy drink. And the whole gimmick of cocaine.
Wait, did you go on a cocaine run with Big Corby?
Yes, I did.
I don't like the name Big Corby. It reminds me too much of Scott Shelby.
He bought this cocaine. I had a sip of it. The whole thing is that it's just like any other shitty energy drink, except it makes your throat hurt.
Oh.
Which I guess is I've never put anything in my nose.
That was always the thing that was missing from energy drinks.
Brian, I think you just drank gasoline.
I know what that's like.
Something we should cover on the podcast at some point is the
freaking gasoline.
Is the McGruff the Crime Dog album about why you shouldn't use different types of drugs. There's an absolute
This
banger.
is going to hurt my mental health,
It's
isn't it?
so fucking good. And there's an absolute banger of a track called Cocaine and Crack. And the song starts with McGruff singing.
Is it please tell me it's to the tune of My Neck, My Back.
I wish. No, these are actually all completely.
My coke and my crack.
These are all completely original melodies too. They all kind of go in different directions, right? So the one about marijuana is sort of like it sounds like something that could be on like He-Man or something. Like it's really like sort of uplifting and exciting.
I thought it was gonna go into like ethnically insensitive territory.
No. It's really
you mean like Heavy Rain?
There's not anything particularly offensive about
McGruff,
it.
the French-Canadian crime hound.
All that I wanted to say, though, was that every time at this point that I hear about cocaine, the song Cocaine and Crack by McGruff the Crime Dog plays in the back of my head, and it starts like this. Using crack and cocaine to get high.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the worst of all possible worlds. The world's first and only show unafraid to do crack and cocaine to get high. I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
And I'm the worst of all possible Brians. And joining us this evening is David Armstrong.
I'm the worst of all possible Davids.
Yeah!
I always love it when we get a guest who admits that they're the worst, because that's what we select for every time.
Do any of your guests say they're the best or the second best?
Not yet, and I hope they never do. I do not want any ego like that anywhere near my
I agree.
own.
That would be despicable, and frankly, we would have to cancel the recording right at that exact moment, and cancel them as well on social media.
Yeah, for sure.
I suppose this is a really terrible time for me to say I'm the best of all possible AJs.
Oh no.
But you can't be. You just said that you were the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe I contain multitudes, friends.
So David, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Oh.
How did you get here?
Ooh, yeah.
Why are you in my house?
Well, I'll tell you, this is how most of my bad video game experiences happen, which is that AJ, who is my roommate and allegedly my friend in real life, will make me play these games, or more comfortably, I'm more used to watching him play games. I don't play a lot of video games.
The ones he plays, he's very good at, though. He's played Bloodborne like how many times now?
Every year.
Every year,
Every
in October.
Halloween. Yeah.
Hell yeah. That's a great Halloween game.
He's incredible at that game.
It's the only one I'm good at.
I think he's secretly really great at video games.
Absolutely not. I've already said I'm the worst. I'm the worst at most things. So, comedian, podcaster, writer, also pretty terrible at all of those things. And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in great fucking company.
Going to, from this platform, extol my praises, quote unquote, upon Heavy Rain.
Yes,
All right.
The David Cage fever dream from 2010 that answers the question, what if you watched the films Seven, and saw back to back, drank a fifth of tequila, and then received a massive head wound and had to recount the plots of both of those movies.
Yeah.
Do you think they have tequila in Quebec?
No, it's only tequila if it's from the tequila region.
Like
of
one
Quebec,
one of the
Of
things
Quebec,
that's so bizarre to me, because I played a little bit of Indigo Prophecy before this, because Indigo Prophecy always appealed to me as a youngster. When it came out, I thought, this game looks fascinating.
Yeah.
I want to see what it's all about. I didn't have a PlayStation, so I didn't play it until recently when I had to get Heavy Rain on the PlayStation 4, and it came in a bundle with everything else. So I just thought, okay, it's on sale. So
What's the elevator pitch for Indigo Prophecy?
Indigo Prophecy is a guy stabs a dude to death in a bathroom as part of an occult ritual that he does not know he's a part of.
Oh,
And there's different
okay.
choices you can make that don't really matter. And there's
They make you
different
think
actions
it
that you can-
matters. They make you think it matters really
yeah.
hard, but no, ultimately no.
Like
and
Heavy
that
Rain.
the game is going to be
Yeah.
about choices and going to be about a narrative that you actually influence from the beginning to
Yeah.
the end. And it always seemed so intriguing. And then I played it, part of it, and I wanted to kill myself. It was...
Well,
So
it's a
this
science
is
says
also, the game was bad.
This
Yeah.
is David Cage's whole MO is he presents a game that is about freedom and choice and about liberating the player, and it's actually not about that at all.
Because he wants it to be a movie, which is inherently more restrictive.
Yes.
Yeah.
What shocked me when I finally sat down and played Indigo Prophecy was not that it was bad. I was kind of braced for that at that point. But the fact that it was just what a ton of people were doing in the 90s anyway with adventure games. It was just an adventure game, but set in a New York City as imagined by a man I don't even believe is really from Quebec. Because the depiction of America in these games might as well be from some country mountain farmer in Slovenia. It is so completely detached from anything I've ever seen, which is actually probably my favorite part of it at this point.
Yeah, the uncanniness that's made by it almost feels like human civilization ended, right? Thousands of years passed, and then someone found the remnants of America and then tried to piece together what life was like thousands of years ago.
Right. Like David Cage at some point in time saw a movie with a black man in it. And has based every character off of that one movie. So there's a black detective in Indigo Prophecy whose apartment, again, this is set present day, 2005 or whatever.
Yes, the present, 2005.
His apartment looks like 1970. It's like a cross between Scatman Crothers' pad in The Shining and then just some French Canadian thinking, what else do black people like?
Yeah.
Lava lamps.
It's like David Cage read a review of America. Somebody left a Yelp review of the United States from their visit. Was like, I saw some black people. They were doing this, and he's like,
Talking
oh yeah, I
jive.
get it now. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
This time around, I am going to, for once, sort of serve as the audience surrogate for anybody who has perhaps not enjoyed the games of David Cage. I have not played Heavy Rain.
Enjoyed is a stretch. I would say endured.
I do know a couple of the major memes, yelling Shaun, pressing X to Shaun or whatever.
Shaun!
Jason. So that is what I know, and I also know what the twist at the end is. But other than that, I pretty much know nothing about this game. I do remember seeing the trailer for Heavy Rain because it was a pretty big game for Sony at the time. Because they were really pitching it as being incredibly visually impressive and very immersive. And again, like you were saying, being a real interactive experience where choices matter. And obviously being somebody who myself, I'm a big fan of games where the player is given a lot of control and a lot of agency to do a lot of different things. That's why I really like immersive sims, like the Deus Ex games, the System Shock 2, Thief, that kind of stuff, as well as Prey more recently. This game does none of that, from my understanding. But I'm excited to hear more about exactly why it's so fucking bad.
I think what's infuriating about it is that it fools you into thinking that it is going to be one of those things where it is so like free and open, and actually it's not. And the twist quite literally absolutely depends on the player having no agency and not having all of the information. So in that way, it's infuriating.
The twist is also impossible based on the parameters that you're given in the game. There's one of the events that cannot happen as scripted.
So to give just the tiniest bit of background here, Indigo Prophecy worked out, made some money, impressed a handful of critics. Quantic Dream moves on, and they start making Heavy Rain. It becomes a Sony exclusive. They release this teaser that's really leaning into the this is a movie. We're really making a movie here.
Yeah, and the facial animations as well. They released The Audition, it was called.
Yeah, they shoot this scene like it's on a handy cam, like it's a screen test, and some stuff happens. I don't know. It's not very comprehensible.
But I do remember that. I remember being pretty impressed with how cinematic and realistic it looked. You know,
and the thing with Indigo Prophecy, also known as Fahrenheit, if you're overseas.
Celsius if you're overseas. I don't use Fahrenheit.
Was this science fiction-y, Donnie Darko-ish, occult meets
Simon Says simulator.
Area 51, and also, yes, a Simon Says simulator. So it was all this stuff with like angels and aliens.
Yeah.
And angels and airwaves.
The final battle, you fight just gargoyles in a church. It's a lot of just dodging gargoyles.
Quick question. What did John Avery Whitaker think about this game overall?
John Avery Whitaker has never heard of video games.
Oh, okay, got
even
it.
to this day, unaware that they exist.
You can play your TV?
What have you done to that oscilloscope? So this game, at the very first sort of teases of this, it sounds like there are going to be supernatural elements, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, because there absolutely were supernatural elements in this game until very, very late in the process when they got written out smartly. But for the most part, Heavy Rain is an improvement on everything that they tried to do in Indigo Prophecy, in the way that you interact with things, the way you walk around a room. They got rid of the whole meter where you commit suicide if you look at yourself in the mirror for too long.
That was a questionable choice to begin with. Was that around the time that Eternal Darkness was kind of doing the same thing with like a sanity meter?
You know, I suppose this comes a couple years after Eternal Darkness, because Eternal Darkness was, if not a launch title for the GameCube, it was a very early title, because it was one of those. Yeah, I think
Eternal Darkness was like 2002 or so.
Yeah, because they had developed it for the Nintendo 64,
right,
and then brought it over to the GameCube instead, sort of like Dinosaur Planet, Star Fox Adventures.
I love that fox. I love that fox crystal. I want to fuck that fox.
I'm going to be honest, I actually really like that game, and I know that's probably the worst opinion I have about Star Fox, but I really like that game.
Here's what we're going to say about bad things. I liked Heavy Rain when I played it in the first place.
Okay.
So we'll get to that. So Heavy Rain ends up coming out having no supernatural elements whatsoever. It's just gritty serial killer drama. Kid died. Guy has a dead kid. The wrong kid died. And then
wrong kid died.
It's just like everything about it is just like this run through of every like gritty thing, to the point where one of the co-creators of NYPD Blue eventually wrote the screenplay for the movie option that never went off the ground.
Oh, thank God.
Because the movie option is just 7, and it's just Saw.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot separate those movies.
Not good.
Not good.
Man, the torture porn era was so fucking funny, man.
It just feels like a 9-year-old watched those movies and then wrote like this script in like a 36-hour cocaine binge, and not cocaine, the energy drink.
Cocaine, the energy drink.
Oh, my throat's all scratchy. Gotta write a screenplay.
And so when the game comes out, at that point, Sony really has quite a bit like riding on its success, right? Like this is a high profile console exclusive.
It's the big hype boy.
Yeah, they were trying to really like jump ahead with facial animations too. That's what the audition was all about. It really wasn't about story at all. It was about the actress who is playing that role auditioning to get that role. And actually, at the time that they made that trailer, that character was not really in the game at all. They
Right.
They
Well, and the
cast
whole
her after.
monologue that she does is not related to anything that happened.
And this was
in that game.
to the point of facial capture and facial animation. This was, if I recall correctly, also around the time that L.A. Noire was being hyped up as well. This was like this was like
We
a
gotta
whole,
talk about L.A. Noire at some point. It's
this
so
was like,
creepy.
This was like
we had
a
been doing
whole
some significant
moment.
work on mocap
Right.
at that point. You know, like Gun had come out,
Right.
and Gun is mostly forgotten, but Gun did a lot with motion capture.
Well, it
and
was the next
facial
big
capture.
thing, right? Because
Yeah.
we'd kind of gotten very good at animation.
Yeah.
So the next thing was like, how do we make humans look as good in movies as they are in video games?
Yeah, and in some of the same way that this is kind of reflecting the adventure games on PC from the middle of the 90s, we're seeing this new era with new graphics where you can render faces with complex detail as like this repeat of the FMV era where everyone was just casting live actors and everything.
Right, but God, I wish this had been cast with live actors. It's so uncanny
It would be
watching
so
this.
much worse, AJ.
I know, but
So
at least
much
it'd be
worse.
fun.
Well,
At
it would have
least
camp
it's-
value.
Yeah,
Exactly.
it would have camp. This
Really lean into the like
This has
command and
camp
conquer,
value.
like
Right,
TV
right.
screens come in.
Spice.
Yeah, Tim Curry plays Norman Jaden.
yeah.
Come on.
I mean, Brian, you say that there's not a lot of supernatural stuff in Heavy Rain, but I would say the technology that especially our favorite boy detective, Nam and Jay.
Oh yeah, give a character a virtual reality headset that he has to do cocaine in until it kills him.
Yes, because the virtual reality itself destroys his brain because he forgets where he is and then gives him like headaches and nosebleeds.
Okay,
so he
so
gets addicted to a painkiller that then
I am
offsets
already
that.
insanely confused. So why don't we
we're
start
gonna
start?
Let me explain.
We're gonna start at the first of two prologues.
Hell yeah.
So
I hate this fucking game.
our boy Ethan.
Ethan Mars is his name.
Ethan
He
Mars.
is one of the only characters in the game not to have two first names as his full name.
Yeah.
So Ethan Mars wakes up in a PlayStation home.
Yep. No,
That's
a
for the
typical
5 people who
American
remember
home,
PlayStation
Brian,
home.
with European
Yeah.
outlets everywhere. A design where the plates are for some reason under like the stereo player, like in his kitchen. It is the most
And they have
European designed
no
house.
decorations. There's like
so one
shelves
of-
that are empty because apparently they
Yeah.
moved in 2 months ago.
Perhaps.
Is what it seems
So
like.
this uses like a sort of static camera that kind of follows you around, but you know, it's like Resident Evil or whatever. And so to try to get around the tank controls problem, they decide to do what Killer 7 did and map movement to the R trigger.
Right.
So you move by pressing R. That way,
What?
when the camera changes, theoretically, it's not going to fuck you up. But they always change the camera at places where you need to turn, so it still fucks you up.
Yeah. Every
the
single
camera
time.
is changing every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
so you press just to clear it, you press the R button to move forward.
Yes. You press the R button.
Like you're
Okay.
driving a car. Like it's
Right.
not. You're
Yeah.
not inhabiting the person. You are driving them.
Right.
Basically.
This
yeah,
is Burnout
it's a little
Paradise
bit of
controls.
Bennett body energy.
It's also what David Cage wants to do to the player is just drive you through this story.
Right.
Like there,
Right.
you really don't have any agency. If you just let all of the dialogue options, if you don't press anything for all the dialogue options they give you, it will automatically choose the best option.
You're quite literally vehicles of the plot.
Yes.
Yeah, when you're moving through the house or through any place, you'll find these things with these big icons that pop up that show that you can interact with them. This is a massive improvement over Indigo Prophecy, where when you pass by something, you'll get like an icon at the top of the screen, and so you can never tell what you're going to be able to reach or interact with or do anything.
Right.
One of the weird things that this game does is that you don't interact with things using buttons.
Right. It's
You
a lot of
always
gesture work.
initiate your interaction using the right stick.
Right.
Okay.
So it would be like press down on the right stick to touch this thing.
Sure.
Or like do these little swoopy motions. What the game is doing is it's asking you to get a certain amount of emotional investment in controlling the character. So that like if you want to turn a door, but you really want to feel it, you just move your stick very slowly in the indicated direction to really get a feel for
You're
it.
like ponderously opening that
Yeah.
door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I weirdly respect. I actually like that the game is like, you're going to get more out of this. It's not going to change the way that the interaction works, but we do want you to try to feel it out as you're doing this for no other reason than to just...
That's fine when you're just walking around a house, because the first level of this is basically a tech demo. It's giving you an idea of what like all the controls are, but it's also showing off that, hey, this is something you could use in a more interesting game somewhere down the line. But in a high pressure situation, and this game is almost nothing but like high pressure situations, like little
until
tiny
you realize
vignettes.
that you can actually take your time every time.
Yeah. But the music leads you to believe that in fact you don't have a lot of time. Like it's very dun 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 dun
So
dun dun.
what I found with the controls was that you get used to it and it doesn't feel all that bad, except for the motion controls.
Yeah.
Which are horrible.
You have to fling your controller across the room.
Controller.
They were particularly bad on Steam, so they have not improved in the.
Wait, what did you have to? Were you using a controller?
I was using a
on Steam?
controller, and it was real finicky about what I was doing in the moment.
Right, and some of these require actually perfect precision, because the whole game is basically quick time events as well.
Yeah.
So,
and again, remember, this is an early PlayStation 3 game. They made the 6-axis controller. They really needed those motion controls. Uncharted had a similarly awful thing where every time you threw a grenade, you had to aim it with your controller.
No.
Well,
What a nightmare.
This was a big thing for Sony. This was also around the era, of course, that the Wii was really, running a train all over everything.
Yeah,
and no one knew like what they were going to do in response to that.
Because motion controls were, with the Wii, they were the whole system's gimmick. And ultimately, that leaned so far into that direction that now judicious use of motion controls is seen as a gimmick, which is unfortunate because motion controls can do a lot of things really, really effectively, especially if you have a good gyro in the controller.
Well, and what's interesting is that they actually killed the Heavy Rain DLC. There was going to be quite a lot of DLC. They ended up making one piece that I don't think has gotten re-released with any of the subsequent editions of Heavy Rain.
Yeah, no, you can't really find it.
And because what they did when they abandoned that other DLC was because Sony wanted them to make a Move version of Heavy Rain that used their new motion control system.
The little
balls,
system that couldn't.
The glowy balls.
The little Hitachi vibrator that you just waved at your screen. The first level really goes out of its way to try and get you to learn these controls. And one of the ways it goes about doing this is that every note that you need to read has been left for you on the floor. So
that's convenient.
Your wife's like, hey, I went out. I went grocery shopping. I'll be back. But it's literally on the floor in front of the door. And there are dressers all around you. There's a bed. There's all these other options. But it really wanted to give you like a sense of verticality, because a lot of the stuff in the game you'll be interacting with is on the floor. A lot of traps later on when we get into the jigsaw portion of the game.
And I think that's an accessibility issue. I'm like a huge advocate for people being able to play video games in an accessible way.
Yeah.
So it's a big ask to have people be good at motion, like all the motion controls, but also the prompts on the screen are mapped to, like if I'm opening the door, the prompt is over the door and it's in white against this pure, like sunlit, beautiful white house. Yeah. And so you're like, well, there's nothing to do in this house because I can't see any of the prompts.
And the worst thing with Heavy Rain 2 is that if something is not right next to you, you don't know if you can interact with it or not.
Correct.
There's fewer things to interact with, which is part of the improvement over Indigo Prophecy.
Yeah.
But the worst parts of the game for me are the parts where it's like, now I have to look for something. Mm-hmm. But I don't even know like what I'm looking for.
Nothing is highlighted anyway. No light is hitting a certain thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no game designy tricks for that. You're playing a movie.
That's another thing though, that like you want to talk about the adventure game genre more broadly. That is a problem also in a lot of adventure games where you have these worlds where it's really unclear what the point of the interactivity is. And really, I think that's why the adventure game genre, at least the point and click genre, didn't really make it. If you can get to the point where you can walk through and play through the game in the way that the developers' heads worked when they were designing the thing, you can have fun with it. But if you can't get on the wavelength of the designer's own mentality, you're not going to have a good time.
Yeah, it's moon logic most of the time.
Right.
You know, I love Day of the Tentacle, but goddamn, some of those puzzles are impossible.
Absolutely.
But at least if you play something like that, or you play like putt-putt, like if you click on stuff and it has nothing to do with anything, there's like a sight gag or something.
There's
fun.
whimsy.
Like, nothing happens in Heavy Rain. You just click on it and Ethan is just depressed.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what Ron Gilbert and Tim Schafer's Heavy Rain would look like?
Oh, God.
I'm in.
It's all I want.
Another mechanic that gets overlooked sometimes because you probably don't use it that much when you play the game is that you have thoughts. So at any time if you're lost, you can press the L2 button and then you'll have some thoughts floating around that you can hit. That's basically just, hey, it's that dog.
Sure.
Yeah. But it's
it's
so
the
funny.
most prosaic line deliveries.
Well, yeah, but like, and the music behind them is usually very intense. It's bum, 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 bum.
The whole game is just so, no pun intended, heavy and somber.
It's wrought.
And,
It's so overwrought.
Yeah.
But it's like you
and so
have
it's-
that
and then
music.
it's just like, I should do the dishes before she gets home.
Yeah.
I really do love her.
But like 4 times in the game total,
Yeah.
those inner
Yeah.
thoughts give you a hint as to what you're supposed to do
Sure.
next.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, maybe I
and-
should go downstairs. Oh, okay, shit, there's stairs? Great. You know? Finally, something to interact with.
Sometimes time just runs and you have to do a certain number of tasks within that time. A lot of Indigo Prophecy is this way. And sometimes you have to do an action first. This is kind of one of the things that Hitman has sort of learned how to finesse.
Right.
So that you know when something is just scripted based on how long you've been in the level
Right.
versus I've gone to this place and now things are going to start scripting in that direction.
And also, a big difference between this and Hitman, of course, is that the scripted stuff is in there for those mission stories because they are ways that you can have fun with the game in scripted ways, but that's not
Right.
the only way you can play the game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is just trying to be like, you have to make a choice. You only have enough time to make this one choice or 2
Right.
out of the 3 or whatever.
And actually playing the game.
Play the gay away.
Playing the gay away. Playing the game in the way that the developers intend you to do can lead to like some really bizarre shit. Like there's a trophy you can get for being a perfect dad where Ethan has to take care of his kid and it requires you to do things at certain times, but they have to land on those particular times. And David can attest to this. While I was playing through this, I would fix him dinner, right? And then just go and stare at the clock because there's no HUD to tell you what time it is. So you have to physically look at the clock. And so to this kid, his dad makes him dinner and then goes and stares at the clock in the corner of the room.
Which I would argue is a bad
2
dad.
hours.
That's a terrible dad.
I think that's a good
But
dad.
I would say in a role-playing perspective, that's absolutely what Ethan Mars is up to these days.
100%. But we should
Here's your
find
dinner.
out why
I'm gonna go
Ethan
look
is
at the
so
clock.
sad. Why is Ethan such
Yeah.
a sad dad besides his bird dies inexplicably during a birthday party?
After the first prologue where the bird suddenly dies in what I assume is an of mice and men situation.
I guess. Did the kid kill the bird? We don't
Is
know.
the kid a bird?
Kid had to kill the bird because the bird was alive right up until that moment.
Oh yeah, he's chirping when you come out of the bedroom.
Yeah. So that first prologue, you're getting ready for a birthday party. You don't see the birthday party happen. You go to the next prologue.
That's too many
after the
kids to
bird
animate.
dies.
They're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. And also the
So you
kids
go-
look like nightmares. Like the
So you
adults
go
look
to the mall.
passable, but the kids are nightmares.
Yeah.
Oh, and they do not speak English.
They sure
Like,
don't.
they've learned their lines phonetically.
Yeah.
And so you go to the mall after this. Well, they learned it phonetically from David Cage too, so
Right.
they're just pronouncing it anyway.
Yeah.
You go to the mall. Your kid
He's accosted by the local mall clown.
the local clown who
Yeah.
your
Dad,
kid, your
I
kid
want that
goes and gets a
balloon.
balloon.
And the clown is like, welcome to my very normal clown balloon
Oh,
shop.
I actually
Here is the bird."
remember. I definitely remember seeing this. Right?
Yeah, so
'Cause-
Jason goes missing and you go
Right.
calling for him,
Right.
right? So it's Jason.
Jason!
You can press
Jason.
X to say Jason as much as you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
And it's very important you
And
get lost in a crowd in this because
On your way to the clown, you run by a menswear store called Portinari's,
Please explain
Which
that reference.
I think is a reference to Folco and Beatrice Portinari. Beatrice being the Beatrice from Dante's Inferno.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I hate it. That's
As you're making your way through the second tutorial, Jason goes missing again.
what? Wait. So hold on. The clown one, you do end up finding him.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they have a fake out disappearance
Oh,
of
okay.
Jason.
Yeah.
And then a real
And
disappearance
then
of Jason.
seconds later,
And so you have to follow his red balloon out of the mall and then he gets hit by a car.
Well, technically,
and dies.
No, he does not get hit by a car.
Ethan
Brian.
gets hit by a car, but Jason ends up dying.
Ethan gets hit by a car because he spears Jason back into the road.
Yeah.
Jason somehow crossed the street before his dad comes outside of the mall looking for him.
There's
and then
just so many people getting into this mall.
Like thousands of people.
big sale at Macy's.
Yeah, it's Black
They're
Friday.
all just going to get balloons from the balloon
It's
clown.
Black Friday. There's a
Ethan-
great discount on balloons.
And Ethan calls out to his son, and his son, like an asshole, goes, "Oh, let me run back across this street. I made it once. I could do it again. I'm a lucky kid." And he runs
Jason
across.
is the Frogger champion of 2010.
Absolutely.
And now this car is parking. This car is definitely like taxiing
it's
to like drop somebody
decelerating.
off in
Nice.
front of the mall. Yeah. And
Maybe
the-
10 miles an hour.
Unsafe at any
tops.
speed. For pedestrians, unsafe at any speed. This is a real fact.
It's terminal velocity, and he runs across, and Ethan goes no, and spears his own child by jumping in front of the car, and I think he snaps his neck like Gwen Stacy style, and he dies in the road.
So my personal theory is that Ethan gets hit by the car and Jason dies about 10 minutes later of natural causes.
yeah, from internal bleeding.
Yeah.
When
yeah.
we hit the title, then where do we go from there?
Well, first of all, the title of this is actually not Heavy Rain. I know we've been saying it that way since the beginning of the podcast, but it is in fact Heavy Rain. Because rain is italicized for reasons beyond me, and I went to go see if that was just a typo or like a weird font thing, but no, in all text, it is Heavy Rain.
I didn't notice that.
And that, I mean, I feel like the whole point of the game is that it is italicized. Like, this is America italicized. This is a murder mystery italicized. There are no deeper layers to Heavy Rain. What you see is what you get.
So after the titles, we find Ethan with Shaun. He's picking up Shaun from school.
The not
Ethan
dead
is
kid.
divorced.
It was Jason who died.
The live kid.
Yeah, Jason died.
dead.
Yeah.
Sean's
Jason
alive.
died. Wrong kid died.
Great.
Wrong kid died.
Wrong kid
Don't
died.
worry, if you play your cards right, they're both dead, man.
Hell yeah, let's go.
I
Hell
let him
yeah.
watch TV. He had fun. So you go home, you watch TV.
A very good cartoon, actually. That's more
very good
entertaining
cartoons.
than the
These are
rest of
from
the game.
the Goblins
Yeah.
school. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly because it's French, but you can check out their YouTube channel. They make really cool stuff. But it is Gobelins.
Cool.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
You make him dinner or you don't. You make him do his homework or you don't. You pick up the newspaper and it says, "Oh, another child, the victim of the origami killer."
Right.
And then Ethan says to himself in his mind, "Why does this kid look so familiar?" A question that mattered once at one phase in the writing of this game and does not matter in the current version of
Why
this
does
game.
it matter? Why did it matter in the other
Because it
version?
used to be that there was a spiritual connection.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
There was a beyond two souls, with the two souls being Ethan's and the origami killer's.
That's right.
Where sometimes your house would fill up with water and then you'd I mean, they made whole playable aspects of this. So a lot of this stuff got removed in the last few months of development. And there are some weird little threads like Ethan looking at that newspaper and being like, "I've seen that kid before," when he has not.
Or his
He's not seen that
blackouts,
kid.
because otherwise the blackouts do not amount to anything.
They sure don't.
They're just very convenient for the plot. So
Yeah.
he blacks out at the end of this scene, and he wakes up in the middle of a street with
Is he the killer?
with an origami in his hand. He's
Origami?
folded in origami.
Oh my God.
And you know what? You know what the weather is, Josh?
Is it a heavy rain?
It's heavy rain.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's getting there. I don't think it's quite heavy
No, it's
yet.
like
Right.
0.8 inches
but
of
it is
rain.
it is
Yeah.
raining.
It-
And I do think, and now that I know that there was the supernatural element to it, there is something very compelling about the rain as a device in this game. It does create this oppressive mood, and it does have this sort of spiritual significance without having any literally spiritual aspect to it
Well,
whatsoever.
I feel like it's kind of like the fog in Silent Hill, right? Where
Sure.
once the fog rolls in, you know that something's about to go down.
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And for the rest of this game, it's going to be raining. It's nonstop
Oh,
rain
okay.
here in
Yeah.
Queens.
So no more
Are we in
symbolism.
Queens?
I've heard it's based on Philly, but also kind of.
I would have said San
Do they-
Francisco.
Do they have
Yeah.
elevated trains in Philadelphia?
I don't think so. No.
Well, the better
Because
question,
I was
Brian,
thinking it was maybe the lure or something.
I think the better question is, do they have an origami store in Philadelphia?
Because there's only one in
There's
this
only
town.
one in this town.
It
And,
is-
Yeah, because the
Ju-
map you end up seeing sort of looks like maybe like the Upper East Side in Roosevelt Island and like I don't know.
Well,
but,
according
yeah,
to
you know.
Wikipedia, which I just looked up,
Okay.
David Cage traveled to Philadelphia to research the setting, so it is supposed to be Philly.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a second that David Cage has ever been in the United
I
States.
can't. I simply can't. And I think we should. This is where we meet Norman Jaden, right? This is where we meet our wonderful little
Norman
FBI boy.
Jaden?
This is
Hey, look at me. I'm Norman Jaden. I'm a detective with the FBI.
Norman Jaden. I ain't playing
I'm
Norman
eating beans.
Jaden.
I'm from yeah.
Here's the thing. I think a lot of people give this game a lot of crap for everyone not having an American accent, which, I mean, sure, but I think that it's actually just indicative of a larger problem. Like, I think it's fine that you can have like people with accents, be Americans, like be born and raised in America. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's fine.
There are some characters where it works. Like, for instance, the woman at the motel that you meet who later starts to work with Shelby.
Yeah, I think, again,
Her having an accent makes perfect sense given her place in society.
Yeah, so I don't really think that, like, I don't think there's really a problem with that. It's just that because the rest of the game was so unresearched and it was just so clearly like they put everything, Canadian in there or like vaguely European in there, that it makes the world feel all the more uncanny, which had they leaned into it and had everyone have just that accent would be fine. But one of our protagonists, Scott Shelby, they just cast an American guy.
One game that a lot of people really love is Deadly Premonition. Because
where everything is wrong.
everything's wrong. And the reason that everything's wrong is that it was one really eccentric Japanese guy who saw Twin Peaks and was like, I could do this, but as a video game.
Yeah, David Cage walked while holding down R2 so that Swery could run.
Now, is it a good game? I mean, I don't know. From what I've seen, I don't think it necessarily is worth all of the acclaim that it gets, because it honestly is a pretty bad game. But it is interesting, right? There's something sort of artistically going on there. There's something singular about the creator's vision that you just can't quite shake off.
Well, that's the difference between somebody not being able to exceed their ambition, and then clearly what's happening in Heavy Rain is David Cage has an upper threshold of imagination.
Yeah.
That
Good
he's
point.
constantly hitting against, and so what you're finding instead is that these are uninspired, they're unimaginative. The writing does not serve characters who have not American accents playing American characters, which is fine, but you have to have writing that serves that, and it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't, because he doesn't see a problem with it.
Right.
And so it's always really funny when a detail is right. Like Ethan's car, you have to drive it a few times, is an automatic transmission.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he got it right.
He did it.
Like at that point, I was just surprised he wasn't driving a Yugo. And
Right.
So we actually go from Ethan to our first little moment with Scott Shelby.
Oh, that's right.
And this scene with Scott Shelby ended up being the demo. So this is what I remember downloading off of the PlayStation Store with my very bad internet connection here in 2010.
So sorry, and Scott Shelby is the detective guy?
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's Columbo.
He's a
He just
PI.
is
He's
Columbo.
not. You later play as someone from the FBI, but Scott Shelby is just a PI,
Right.
Who's investigating the origami killer.
And he very much is this guy he's like your stereotypical, he's big, he's got the trench coat, it's the whole fucking thing.
Detective Gumshoe, basically,
He's an
from the Ace
asthmatic.
Attorney
He's
series.
asthmatic. That's important.
Yeah,
It's very important
So
that he's asthmatic.
he goes to the motel and talks to the mother of
One of the dead
not quite
kids.
the latest victim. I think maybe the second to most recent.
Yeah.
And so this is the woman who was from the tech demo in the first place. She definitely has a strong French Canadian accent. And again, here in this situation, it
works.
It makes sense. It's not an issue.
Yeah.
I think she's actually one of the better actors in this game.
Oh, by
I think
far.
She
by
has
far.
certain
of a game.
idiosyncrasies that absolutely work for her.
Yeah.
Because her dialogue is so cliched and awful that the fact that her performance is a little bit different than you'd expect really makes it work.
Yeah.
So he talks to her for a bit, in most cases doesn't really get anything out of the conversation. and then heads out, has to use his inhaler.
Which stops him in the hallway, and it's like a full-on like asthma attack. Like this man is actively dying, and you have to like do a lot of like very intense like commands in order to get him to just raise his inhaler
Well,
to his
it's like
mouth.
what you were saying, AJ. Like the stakes are so high all the time.
And so it means that nothing means anything eventually.
As you're dying of asthma, this John of the woman that you were talking to, he breaks into her room and tries to like kill her.
Yeah.
So you have to go in. Well, you can choose not to. It doesn't make any difference, but you can choose not to go in.
Does she die, or does she just get
the
beat
shit
up?
out of the guy? She doesn't die.
Yeah.
And by when you say you can go, at this point you are still controlling.
You are still Scott Shelby.
Right.
Yeah. And you can lose the fight or you can win the fight. But with Scott Shelby, he never dies throughout the game because he can't because of the way the story has been built. Although I think that would have led to an interesting outcome. But I guess in every fight, if you get owned as Scott Shelby throughout the whole game, your face just gets more like scarred up.
That's pretty cool.
So you fight the fight and then you leave and then she's like, I might talk to you sometime later. Or you don't fight and then she still talks to you anyway later.
Yeah. So far we have Ethan Mars, who is the father of the two dead kids. I'm sorry, one dead kid and Shaun. And then you have
Sean's dead inside.
Yes. And then you have Scott Shelby, who is the PI who is investigating the Origami Killer's murders. And then we move on to our beautiful FBI boy, our dear beloved Norman Jaden. Norman Jaden,
fucking Norman Jaden.
Wear sunglasses outside, Norman Jaden, going to the wasteland. You know, David, what is the line when you arrive on the crime scene?
If you're looking for rain, traffic, and dead bodies, you've come to the right place.
Let's go, dude. Let's go.
I'm in. If that was the tagline, I would have played this.
I also love the use of the word wasteland, a word that people don't actually say ever.
They say it like
here
so.
has a very specific meaning. There's just a wasteland outside of town where all the bodies get dumped.
Lauren
and there's like
says it in the previous scene. She goes, my son died on the wasteland, as if we all know what that is.
You've never had to find your son's body on a wasteland.
It's
like,
the famous,
no, I haven't had to find anything on a wasteland.
Famous Philadelphia wasteland.
It feels like bad Google Translate. That they wanted the word dump. They wanted the word dump, but what it came back was as waste, like land of waste, wasteland.
And this isn't even a wasteland. This is just the space between an interstate and a railroad track.
Yeah, it's actually
just
kind of
a
nice.
shitty place to be.
I'd live there.
Okay, well, David and I disagree.
I'd ride the rails.
David's
I'd live there.
I'm gonna build a homestead here.
When he puts on his bullshit virtual reality glasses, there's like nice plant life around him.
That's true.
So like you can carve out a nice living there.
As a horticulturist on the outskirts of Philly.
It's not a wasteland. It's a startup land, if anything.
That's what makes Norman Jaden. That's what makes him a little bit different than the other detectives around him because he has the power glove.
So what you're saying is this
Yes, he sure does.
This detective's a little bit different.
Maybe
it's different for all the detectives.
What's funny is that he's not a rogue cop on the edge who doesn't play by the rules, though. If anything, he is like the rule-abiding detective.
He's the rules lawyer.
Right.
His protagonist.
His whole thing, the thing that makes him complex is that he's addicted to drugs. But what the game doesn't want to tell you at the beginning is that you're supposed to do the drugs. The drugs are the only thing keeping your mind intact.
Right, because if you
he's
don't
not addicted to drugs. He's just doing something that's going to harm him because the FBI decided to give everyone power gloves that make them insane, and the cocaine is the only thing keeping him alive.
Using crack and cocaine.
Cocaine, the energy.
What is it called? It's not called cocaine. It's called
like tryptophan or something.
Yeah, makes it real sleepy.
Tryptocane.
There it is.
And he keeps it's like a liquid in a vial that he like does like poppers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little blue.
Gets the vapors off of it. Yeah.
The glasses don't do anything. Also, it is a whole other element that is like you could just be using files. Just use files.
They make a heads-up display appear where the clues are, which is just how the game works already.
Yeah,
you just see things pop up where they're
so basically the glasses were a way for the game to sort of justify the lore, but it does justify through lore a design choice. But ultimately, who gives a shit? Like.
Right.
nobody
But
really
disguising
But
loading
that's
screens.
the thing
Right,
is,
right.
everyone else gets that design choice.
Yeah,
Right.
Nam and
I
Jaden is
think-
the only one that it goes out to justify. It's not like all of them have glasses that they can put
Yeah,
on.
because this goes into this computer thing, this Power Glove virtual reality headset goes into very weird places later that I think was just like David Cage having the final say on everything and just being like, oh, also I want this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, also I want a saw thing. Oh, also I want a big virtual world. Oh, also I want a Power Glove.
But I think like David Cage, I have this image in my head of him presenting all of these things as if it's common, like the use
Right.
of the word wasteland. So he's like, as they're finishing the production, he's like, oh, and of course, Nam and Jaden has virtual reality glasses. What? What do you mean? No, we know this, right? He's a FBI agent. He has virtual reality glasses to organize his files.
There will be little tanks
Okay.
that come out at the end and like haunt him, I guess, forever. And then he just like leaves the room.
Some designer pushes back and they're like, I don't think we should have this. And he's like, what are you, some kind of a faggot? Are you some kind of a faggot pussy bitch boy? Do you have a vagina instead of a penis? Because I think less of you.
I will Photoshop your head onto Nazis, allegedly.
Oh my God. So, just to kind of clear this then,
All of this
because
allegedly.
I'll be perfectly honest,
I don't want to get sued.
I am slightly lost at the moment, which should come as no surprise.
It's a hard plot to follow even in the game
At
if it
this
helps.
point, we have now Norman Jaden, who is the other main character introduced. He is an FBI guy. He has virtual reality goggles that he needs to do cocaine in order for the goggles to not kill him or something.
Yeah. Yep.
That's correct.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure I had that right. And
Yes.
So Norman is looking at the latest crime scene.
Okay.
The local
latest
PD are
victim.
not very happy that the FBI have now come on and like claim this is their jurisdiction.
Sure. Now, is this crime scene? This is connected to what happened before, or this is a brand new crime scene now?
This is the latest kill of the origami.
The
This is another
origami killer has struck
Right,
again.
right.
And so what happens is the origami killer kidnaps a kid. That kid is someplace where they eventually get drowned by the rain. So they only get kidnapped when the rain is going
Yeah,
down.
so the murder
and then they get
weapon
drowned.
is heavy rain.
Right.
Yes. And then the kid's body, like his face gets covered in mud for some reason. He gets an origami put in his hand, and then he's covered in chamomile? No.
No, orchids. It's
Orchids.
covered
Doesn't
in
matter.
orchid.
It doesn't
He
matter.
gets covered in orchids.
It sure doesn't, Josh. You think it does in the moment, but good God, does it not?
If you manage to climb up to the interstate, you find some tire tracks.
Okay.
So you know the somehow the make and model of the vehicle that has dropped.
Yeah, based on tires. Right.
Based on tires. You know that it's a Pontiac Tempest instead of a Buick Skylark.
Yes. Yes, but that's not explained until the court scene much later on.
Yes.
But there,
when Fred Gwynn shows up, and
but there is a billboard behind you if you manage to climb the interstate. That's just a seal that says "Save Me" on it because Indigo Prophecy does
That's great, actually.
briefly deal with global warming, and it's something that David Cage is actually really obsessed with. Global warming. It's like one of the only positive things about him. Not causing it, like he's not promoting global warming. He's not pro global warming.
But that was also the one good thing about heavy rain, right? Is it stopped climate change from happening. So
Yeah, because it cooled everything down.
Right.
It's throbbing 6 inches of heavy rain.
When you're balls deep in rain, you get to
well, we meet the local detective. He sucks.
Yeah.
Carter
Whatever.
Blake.
Carter Blake.
Carter Blake, another character that
Norman
has 2
Jaden
first
versus
names.
Carter Blake. He's the Stephen Bochco character.
Very good.
He's the guy who's just causing trouble every step of the way.
Okay.
So we're with Shelby, and he's interviewing a man named Hassan.
Oh no, the
At his convenience store.
scene.
And everyone who talks to Shelby gets attacked immediately, like a minute after talking to him. And Shelby ducks into this bodega to get an inhaler, which I guess you can just buy from the back shelf of a bodega.
Sure, why not?
No, he's going in there initially to interview the store owner. He knows the store owner is one of the
Right.
victim's parents.
But he still has to go
And-
back and get that.
Yeah, because
that-
the guy's like, "Fuck you, I'm not talking to you," and he's like, "Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Can I get an inhaler?"
Yeah. There's a guy shows up with a gun, and then you as Shelby can choose to save the day so long as you walk slowly enough over the bag of potato chips that got dropped on the floor.
High stakes.
Also, I think there's a
Extremely
glass
high
bottle.
stakes.
Yeah, but again,
Oh
the
yeah,
music is
there's a
bum,
glass
bum,
bottle
bum,
you can
bum,
bump
bum.
into and knock over, and then you fight the guy for a bit, and then maybe he shoots you and grazes you with a bullet, and you get another scar or whatever.
Yeah, But
and again, none of this matters. It's a scene that passes by, no matter what you do.
But if you are playing the game the way the designers want you to play it, which is actually truly insane, you have to let Hassan die. You have to let the guy shoot him dead, because it leads into the greater arc of this whole thing, which can we just talk about who the killer is at this point?
Yeah, we all know.
Well, so I'll introduce it this way. When I remember when Heavy Rain was coming out, before I had a chance to play the demo or anything, they put out a video on YouTube that was just this chapter specifically of the convenience store.
Yeah.
And showing what you could do and how you had to watch your step over the potato chips. And in the top comment on the YouTube video, this is an era gone by so long ago now, it just had in all caps, Shelby is the origami killer, Shelby is the origami killer, Shelby is the origami killer, Shelby is the origami killer.
Well, okay, and so they did like tests of this. They had play testers play this game. At the end of it, it was like 100 playtesters they had played this game. And at the end, not a single one of them guessed that Scott Shelby was the origami killer.
Well, no shit.
So hold on. And did they think then, wow, this is so great. We did such a good job.
As this
Of course they did.
huge
I think so, yes.
achievement.
That's so fucking stupid.
Which is not how mysteries work.
No,
right?
the whole point of a mystery.
Well, unfortunately, it is how mysteries work, which is why I generally don't like them.
No, that's that's not.
That scene from the end of Murder by Death with Truman Capote is 100% true.
That's not the point of the genre. The genre gives you a number of different potential suspects who all have reasons that you could think that any of them are the guy. And so if nobody thinks that this guy could have been the guy, then it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's just
I think
stupid.
That's like Conan Doyle, I think, has a quote about that. If nobody guessed your ending, then you've written a bad mystery.
Right. And obviously you don't want everybody
And then
to guess
he
your
added,
ending.
by the way, fairies are real, and I've seen them.
Yeah. How do you fake a photo? Quote Conan Doyle.
He really was the David Cage of his era.
Yeah.
The Cottingley fairies. Oh my God.
So yes, he is of course
Who
the
could
origami
forget
killer.
Sherlock Holmes' rival detective, Norman Jaden? And
Is
the
that-
battle atop Reichenbach Falls.
Is the reason that you wanted to raise that, AJ, that there's something here that was already making you think that he was the killer? Or
No. Because the way that developers want you to play the game, and the only way that the twist makes sense at all, is that the reason that Scott Shelby is visiting all the victims of the origami killer, or at least their parents, is because he's trying to destroy all the evidence that would lead to his arrest. So you have to let Hassan die because he has like evidence against Scott Shelby, basically in all of his old mementos.
Well, but if you save him, he'll give you the box.
Right, but you don't know that is Scott Shelby. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose that's true.
Yeah, if he dies, he gives you the key to the locker.
So if you're role playing the character correctly, then he would let him die.
But you would have to know that he's the killer
and
before playing the game.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
correct.
and because when you come across the women who are the mothers of your victims, the fathers have disappeared in the meantime.
Yes.
Like since the son disappeared, before the son died, the fathers are nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
And that, except for in this one case, which will be important, I guess, sort of, in the way any of this is important.
So where do we go after this?
So then we find ourselves at the top of an old firehouse, I guess.
Yeah.
Madison Page's apartment.
Yes.
One of the
Madison
strangest
Wait,
apartments
this is
I've
another
ever
guy?
seen.
I'm so sick of this. This is
Josh, Madison Page is a lady.
Yes.
okay. Well,
Madison
And you
Page
will
is our
address her
only
as
lady.
such.
Wait, is she the one? Is this
Yeah.
the shower scene stuff? Is this
This
that
is
whole
the
thing?
shower
Yeah,
scene.
she.
Okay.
So you
Reached the
wake up.
time.
A lot of interactions that you do in this game is just someone goes and looks at something that you could already see.
Yeah, and then kind of reacts to it, but their face doesn't change.
Like maybe
They just kind of like move it
when
like a
you use,
snake.
When you use the computer in Indigo Prophecy, it's always the most insane shit because they build this whole like alternate history where Pakistan is about to declare nuclear war on China.
That's
or
right.
something. But, so Madison Page walks around her apartment a little bit, takes a shower, and there is some really like genuinely impressive animations on her taking off her clothes.
They
which is
spent
very,
a lot
very
of
hard to
time
do.
animating that, which once we
a
get into
lot
sort
of
of the
time,
office
man.
politics of Quantic Dream is going to make a
Yeah.
lot more sense.
Right.
And this is one of those things where when people hacked into the game and found the character model, like this, you do see her topless and you do see her ass, but like she has pubic hair that you would never see playing the game normally. And so much of this game, again, they're just trying to be like, this is adult.
Right.
This is art. We're so tasteful about the nudity that it's like tastelessly broadcasting how tasteful it is.
How does this compare with the Norman Reedus shower scene in Death Stranding is what I want to know.
interesting.
Well, because in Death Stranding, Hideo Kojima is sexually attracted to Norman Reedus.
Yeah, of course. Who isn't?
Oh, 100%.
And he wants you to know that.
Right. It's the male gaze.
So it's far more respectable.
Yeah, Hideo Kojima loves a good butt.
Yeah.
I loves a good man.
The
butt.
way that dudes are objectified in his games through the male gaze, like that is anyway. This can already.
It's amazing. It's incredibly erotic, and it's not remotely shy about it. Right.
And I think that's exactly the frustrating thing. Sort of like you said. Yeah. It's hiding the ball around what the point of the thing is.
Well, and the whole thing here is like it seems like all of this game is trying to prove Roger Ebert wrong.
That video games
like that's the whole thing.
Be art.
We really are art. A game can be a movie. A game has tasteful nudity, which also Roger Ebert never really held that opinion sincerely. He just did it as like a thing to like on his Twitter account way back in the day. He was always sharing articles from people talking about why video games are art.
Right.
He just thought it was an interesting position to hold as a public figure. That's just who Roger Ebert was. But
it's a clinical, dry, sexless shower scene. I find nothing erotic about it, and it's upsetting, frankly.
Yeah, and what's even worse is what happens next. Yeah.
All of a sudden, a man breaks into her apartment. And then also maybe another man if you withstand his knife attacks for long enough.
Yeah, it's a home invasion scene. Right?
You eventually get knifed to death.
Yes, no matter what you do, you end up dead. And you wake up and it's a nightmare.
It's a home invasion scene with really strong sexual overtones. Yeah. You know, like, I mean...
It's really gross,
but it's trying
honestly.
to be tasteful. It's trying to be edgy and tasteful and mature and adult. And then you wake up and the whole scene was a fucking dream and you move on to the next chapter.
Yeah, it has no bearing on the rest of the plot. Everything that you did means nothing. And the way that David Cage's opinions on women, particularly the women in his games, allegedly, you can tell that this character, is so underwritten and is basically there to heal the male character and then eventually fuck the male character. You know, David brought up a very interesting point that Madison Page as a character could just as easily been replaced by Ethan's wife.
It should have been Ethan's wife. It doesn't make any sense that it's not.
She comes to the police station. She does come to the police station and say, you really fucked this up.
Yeah, twice. She comes and she says, why did you lose Shaun? And then the second time she comes, she's like, I think my husband's the origami killer. So I think that's an even bigger implication or indictment of David Cage's opinion of women. Oh, your wife's just gonna throw you under the bus one day.
Right.
She thinks I'm the origami killer.
I am really loving.
I'm going to
by the way,
Photoshop her head onto this Nazi body.
It's Tommy
around the
isn't
office.
it?
My favorite thing so far is the wildly different David Cage impressions that we're getting between David and AJ right now. Neither of which I think are quite nailing the Quebecois thing, but I both appreciate both of them.
At this point, I'm just doing Nam and Jaden.
I will say it gave me the indication of who the killer was. I already knew who the killer was, but that established for me because Norman, Madison, and Ethan all suffer from mental like hallucinations or some weird thing like that. And that could be a red herring to murder, but Scott Shelby has asthma.
Oh,
so Scott Shelby must be the killer.
Right.
Because they gave the other three very obvious mental like red herrings, and it's like, oh, the guy who has asthma, he's the killer for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, you outsmarted David Cage. Great job.
I feel great.
This chapter is such a great microcosm of at least the first half of this game because it's all just illusory stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And this chapter, in all the other ones, you have these choices you can make, but they don't actually matter. There's no reason for you to be making the choices in the first place. And then this chapter drives it all the way home with like, this didn't even happen. Ethan goes to his psychiatrist.
Who works for a nefarious psychiatrist organization that has, I guess, an office on the top of a church or a skyscraper.
He has a big concrete sculpture in the middle of his office that just says ego.
I have had it up to here with big psychiatry.
Yeah. Also, that psychiatrist is just such a piece of shit later on. Like
you go to a playground, Shaun gets kidnapped.
Oh, okay.
Shaun gets kidnapped exactly at the moment where you decide to have a blackout. The origami killer is really good at just targeting guys who are having random blackouts.
which
and
again
getting them
makes
right
more
in the
sense
blackout.
if he's connected with Scott on some sort of
right,
like
as a psychic thing.
Right.
But that's why they couldn't remove
right.
it. That's why they couldn't remove it, because then otherwise Ethan's just a shitty dad.
Right.
Yeah.
Who, like, there
But
was
he
no way to
can be,
rewrite
you
how
know?
he was supposedly loses Shaun in that moment.
But like that is even stronger because then he's a shitty dad who becomes a good dad.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
Which is what the origami killer is looking for.
But the game is afraid to really like tell an interesting narrative. It needs that easy way out, because if the game were to take the risk of making a narrative choice that might potentially alienate you to what the protagonist character is doing, then it might alienate you to the game itself. Ironically, though, you're already very alienated from the game because of how much it fucking sucks.
Yeah. And just how many barriers that it sets between you and actually buying into this world.
Right,
I think
right.
is very, very important.
Well, that's why I think it was so important for the advertising to make you buy into the world. The advertising had to go so hard on every choice matters, because even when your choice doesn't matter, if you feel like it does, you will be more invested in the story.
Right.
And if you do go along with I will move the stick slower so that it replicates the action a little bit more realistically, then you will, by that tack, just by itself, become more invested in whatever the game is doing, no matter how stupid and bullshit it is.
Right, sure.
Right.
They end up at a motel.
Yeah.
You get some more Norman Jaden stuff. You get a scene where Norman Jaden is just waiting, and he's just throwing a virtual ball against a virtual wall to wait while he's using his power glove to just sit around and play a video game inside the video game. It's not even a game. You're just bouncing a ball.
You're
You're
throwing
doing
the
one
ball and
single
catching it.
action.
He's just overusing the VR that is killing him.
Well, and
Makes
then he's
me
going to
wanna
have to
die.
use more crack and cocaine to get high. So
Which he does. That's how the scene ends.
Oh, okay.
I actually
he's
did take a
Roxo
note on
the
this.
rock and roll clown.
I took a note on this moment specifically, which was eons of technological advancement has gotten us to the point where we can make an imaginary wall and an imaginary ball to throw against that
Hell yeah.
wall.
Hell yeah.
So Norman Jaden, he gets an office in the back of the police station
Where he tries out the Power
and
Glove's other capability, which is sucking you off.
Oh, okay,
to
cool.
create an entire computer environment where he can look at the crime scene as though he's on Mars.
And talk about like choices that you want to make. You can make it a rainforest. You can make it Mars. You can make
can
it
be underwater.
That was my favorite.
I've always this is answering the question that I always had, which is, what if I could look at all of the things that I've collected in terms of documentation as if it were Microsoft Bob work environment?
Yes, exactly.
You have to physically like leaf through files.
What if my library was outside?
The VR version of Clippy that it has is the bartender from The Shining if he was fake British.
Oh,
Yeah,
weird.
because you start out actually in a lounge, right, playing a piano, and he appears as Mr. Jaden. Come here
So
for the usual.
you end up at a motel. Madison also ends up at a motel because of the insomnia and night terrors that she has.
Yeah.
You just didn't, just like the prologues, you just didn't need that scene and you could have just met her at the
Where's
motel.
mom at this point?
Gone.
Who fucking cares?
Entirely gone.
Hanging out.
She's just a bitch, basically. That's like the whole.
Yeah, maybe she had a slight branch of the plot that was all the supernatural stuff.
But
and they just
probably,
kinda-
like,
who
again,
knows?
it speaks to how much the character cares about writing characters who you give a shit about, and especially writing women. Like,
when you're Shelby, you end up at the trailer of the most recent victim. If I was calculating all of this correctly, the last victim, you end up at the trailer, you find that the mom is attempting suicide, you save her life, you feed her baby, you go to Scott Shelby's thoughts, and he says, that must have belonged to the kid who disappeared. As though he doesn't know. And he's not doing this in a fugue state. He's doing it completely consciously. And so every time I played as Shelby, I checked his internal monologue to see what he was saying about things.
That's the other
and it doesn't
betrayal.
line up at all.
Yeah.
That's the other betrayal of the game mechanics.
Yeah.
Is that you are in the thoughts of the killer.
Right.
And the killer is like, this killer guy,
Right.
really clever.
You have to be,
Wow.
you have to be really smart in misdirecting away from that stuff, which they could have been, and we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, well, they do. There is one point where you can go into Scott's thoughts, and he says, well,
Scott's thoughts.
I've been so busy
Scott's
since you...
Thoughts, my favorite Office episode.
Yeah, no, you go into his thoughts, and there's a line that he has where he says, well, I sure have gotten busy since the origami killer started killing again.
Business has really picked up for me.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, yeah, I guess he'd be thinking that, but I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Like,
Not in that way. Not like that.
Like when you come across him as the killer, he never refers to the origami killer as like a separate persona.
Yeah.
It isn't like he is the big concrete ego sculpture, and then there's another concrete sculpture that is origami killer.
Scott Shelby's persona is Arsene.
So when we're at the motel, this is another one of the great details. This is designed to be sort of a great American motel, but the room numbers follow European and I assume Canadian conventions. So the second floor is where the 100 numbers are, and the third floor is where the 200 numbers are.
Right.
I see what you're up to, Canada. You ain't getting down here anytime soon. Yeah, sure, you won the War of 1812, but what?
They only
now
have 2 floors. That's why.
Brian,
Yeah.
I didn't.
Nothing exceeds 3 floors in Canada.
You gonna burn down DC again? Because come on, do it. Burn down DC again. I'm not joking. Just go right ahead.
Brian,
I'm not gonna stop you.
I waited until this moment to tell you, but David is actually Canadian.
I'm here to arrest you. Brian.
Is that true or is that a bit?
No, that's absolutely true.
Huh.
This is
Dual
a
citizenship.
very carefully constructed accent that David Armstrong is doing.
Yeah.
He's
I'm actually
from
trying to
Montreal.
hide my Quebecois accent as we do this podcast. I actually do a flawless David Cage.
You want to know why? Because David
Actually,
Armstrong.
I am David Cage.
Oh no!
I'm Scott Shelby. Oh my god.
Fuck.
Let's wait for 6 inches of rain. The fatal amount of rain.
The perfect amount of rain to kill a kid is 6 inches?
Yeah.
What I do enjoy about this game, again, because they're trying to do the Steven Bochco thing, I guess, is the cops just do everything wrong and fuck everything up and are
they're the
very
best.
like
At every
mean.
turn.
So like you investigate at one point, one of your suspects is this very religious schizophrenic dude who's very clearly like not really a harm to anyone except himself.
Yeah.
And then you have a chance to just kill him as Norman.
Yeah.
Like all you do is break into his apartment illegally and harass him when he comes home.
So this
Assault
part of the
him and
game,
maybe
this part of the
murder
game
him.
is actually realistic, is what
Yeah.
you're saying.
You can tell that David Cage was like, I want an action sequence here. And then there's like, well,
Yeah.
what do we want to happen here? Like, how does this progress the story? And he's like, I don't understand the question.
It's all dead ends. It could be cumulative to the origami
Yeah.
killer themselves.
Right.
Like they get in a chase sequence with the origami killer. They get into a fight with the origami killer, but they don't. It's all these dead ends that all these characters keep following. And they're like, oh, well, all right. Now that's
As
over.
it stands, you could have a much stronger game by cutting at least a third of the content from the main story. Because then you'd actually just be left with most of the decisions that actually are consequential.
Right.
So at what point then do we actually get to the sort of, you were saying the Saw part of this, right? Getting
Saw
trapped by the
segment.
origami killer or whatever.
They get to the motel, which becomes Ethan's bat cave, and he opens this box, and there's 5 origami figures.
Oh, okay.
And a cell phone.
And a cell phone. And the cell phone has some grainy ass footage of, I think it's supposed to be Shaun, stuffed in a grate.
In a storm drain, yeah.
In a storm drain.
Yeah.
And then you
Once
open each
once
of the
this storm
origamis.
grate sees 6 inches of rain, you're going to see some
That
serious
kid's
shit.
dead.
Yeah, that
kid's dead.
That kid's drowned.
The ankle is the key to the heart. So, if it gets ankle deep, then that kid's dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
The heart stops.
It's a heavy drain.
Yep.
And so all these origami figures, this is also where the plan completely falls apart and the logic of this game goes out the fucking window.
Sure.
Because how the hell does the origami killer know which one of the origami figures Ethan is going to open up in order to make it the perfect order that he doesn't immediately die? One of the tasks is drink this poison that will kill you in an hour, which
That's a
has
good
to
point.
be the final one. Otherwise, you can't possibly solve any of the other trials. So how the hell does Scott Shelby know these victims are going to pick the ones in this order? Like, it's
I also
actually
want to know
impossible.
how Scott Shelby rented that space in particular, because everything else
The man is
is
loaded.
abandoned or dingy. And then for the last task, you enter the set for 2001: A Space Odyssey to drink the poison.
It's all well lit. There's all these like stage lights like pointing at the vial of poison. But anyway,
It's like people would notice.
So
absolutely.
it's just like
It's like the Joker did it.
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
the Joker did it in Arkham City.
I was going to say, like, this is dumb. This is just stupid.
Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely
Oh
dumb.
God, I wish it knew. I wish
Right.
it had that sort of sweary
because this
weirdness
throws
to
out
it.
the window any pretense of it being a serious story. I mean, this is the stuff up until this point obviously was differing levels of silly to absurd, but at this point it's just dumb.
Yes.
If there was interesting stuff going on, or like you said, like if there was actual risk involved in the stories, in the
Risk
story
of rain.
Yeah. If there was leading up to this heavy risk, if there was like that all leading up to it, then you would be willing to forgive and ignore things like what order did he have to open the origami in?
Yeah,
you know,
right.
but because there is absolutely nothing going on, you're forced to sit there and think about these things like what if he'd opened the poison one first? You're absolutely right.
So the origami killer gives Ethan these things that he has to do. He has to crawl through a bunch of glass and then walk through like
well,
electrical
hold on.
pylons.
I think we should start with the very first task because he does not do the poison one first. He instead chooses a task called the bear, and we'll tell you what the bear is after this commercial break.
Oh.
Hello, listeners. It's me, Norman Jaden, former member of the FBI and big boy detective who solved the case of the origami killer. Has this ever happened to you? You're sitting at your desk, minding your own business, wearing your AR glasses that are slowly cooking your brain like a hard-boiled clam, and you decide you need a big swig of refreshing Orangina, so you take off your glasses when all of a sudden, there's little computer tanks invading your everyday life? Then you need tryptocane. It's got the soothing quality of a large turkey dinner with the revitalizing kick of weapons-grade cocaine. It's the perfect remedy for any ailment. Nosebleeds. So get a vial of tryptocane today from any doctor on our universal healthcare Listeners, I gotta come clean. Things have not been going well for former FBI detective Norman Jaden. Over the course of a few days, Norman Jaden watched one guy get shot and 2 human bodies pop like meat balloons. I tried to take my mind off things by going on kilometer-long walks and watching Succession, you know, with Matthew McFadden. Norman Jaden loves Matthew McFadden. But I just keep thinking about those poor kids drowning under 15 centimeters of rainwater, and there's only so many times you can throw an imaginary ball against an imaginary wall before you start wondering, is this real? Is anything real? Does any choice I make ultimately matter? Oh no. Norman Jaden's fading. Just need a little... Oh fuck yeah! That's the stuff. Tryptocane. What are you gonna do? Not go through your files on Mars? I know this doesn't. I know this really doesn't lead into things, but I would just for the record, I have a note in here that just says David quotes while playing Heavy Rain, and these were things I heard David yell.
Oh yeah, let's just read
From the
these.
other room.
This will be a great way to get back into it. Go for it.
Why can't I put on clothes? I want to live.
That's Madison.
I forgot you could get up fast or you can get up slow like an old man. Mm-hmm. And it should be noted, he said this truly despairing, like as if somebody close to him had like deeply, deeply wronged him. AJ, I can't juggle.
Yeah.
The juggling thing, it's so long. You have to hit so many prompts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You don't even get to play as Prompto.
That's an Indigo
No.
Prophecy holdover.
Actually,
'Cause everything you do in Indigo Prophecy, it takes like 5 minutes.
That was a question that I had about the detective with the virtual reality whatever. Is he at least able to play as Prompto or?
No, he's locked. He's locked behind a paywall.
Yeah, he doesn't actually. He I don't think he lives long enough. Although I guess with him being in Detroit,
That's an Easter egg for our listeners who listen to No
Who
Cartridge.
just finished listening to the No Cartridge podcast episode that just came out today. Yeah.
yeah,
He is the trial version of the glasses, and he doesn't have the DLC where you
Right,
get to play
right.
Prompto.
yeah.
Cool.
However, Norman Jaden loves the Auden episode. He loves playing as Auden.
So let's
I love Gnome and Jodin.
let's get back
I love New Order Joy Division.
with then the bear trial or whatever the fuck.
bear trial.
Tell me more about this.
So
Well, you go to a local leather bar.
yes, and your sinister task.
It's like what someone said. You know, you want a Bloody Mary, you go to a bear bar and you call someone Mary.
So you are sent
so dumb.
coordinates.
I love old
That's a
homosexuals. and their
great
jokes, I
old
just
gay
gotta say.
joke.
You are sent to. You are given the coordinates for a auto repair shop, basically. And when you go there, he's like, "I hear you have a car for me," and he's like, "Oh yeah." The auto mechanic, who seemingly knows this man, sees Ethan and it's like, yeah, Ethan is Scott Shelby. I recognize you. You gave me that car a year ago, and we've just been driving it around for you, just waiting.
It's a Back to the Future 3 situation, you know.
Yep.
Are you Mr. McFly?
Yeah.
We've been holding on to this letter since 1885.
It suggests all car mechanics do this. This is a typical American thing. You can have them hold a car
it
for
means
a
that
year.
Shelby has done this a number of times with a number of different mechanics.
True. That's,
Yes.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
does
so-
he get the money?
I don't know.
He doesn't live well.
He does not. I mean, his apartment's actually not terrible. He's in a bad part of
Sure,
town.
but it's rent control.
Does he make money investigating his own crimes?
Yeah.
Is it like a, it's
Does
like
he make
a
money as a PI?
it's like
I
a
think
murder
that's
she
what he
wrote
does, yeah.
kind of situation?
Yeah. How long before Angela Lansbury kills
Oh,
again?
no. She's gonna get murdered.
It seems pretty clear by the end that Scott Shelby is not working for anyone throughout this entire game.
No,
That's
he
his
has a
personal
pension
mission.
though because he's a retired cop.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
We give them too much money.
There we go.
Fund.
That's actually defund the police is actually the moral of Heavy Rain. Not
Well,
enough
and
for
that's
talking
actually
about this.
that's
In
one
a
of the
way
things I
it
think
is.
Heavy Rain does well. It's just like he is a serial killer who's also an ex-cop, which is statistically true.
Thanks, woke David Cage.
So they have, so he gets the car from the mechanic. What I love about every single one of the Origami Killer's trials, right, is that there is a SIM card at the end of it that he puts into the phone and gets another like piece of the puzzle to get the address to where Shaun is being held, right? And he never thinks when he goes into any of these scenarios to just break shit until he finds the SIM card. He always goes along with the
Yeah.
plan like a good little victim and then gets the information to then find the SIM card.
And this one even gives you a prompt to open up the glove compartment. And it's like, well, it doesn't open.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just kick it open. Just kick open the glove compartment.
But presumably he's being surveilled the whole time. So like if he were to not follow the rules, then maybe, you know, like, right?
Well, no.
Presumably.
No,
Presumably,
he
but I don't
always
think he
knows
is.
when he's being surveilled, actually. Because
Yeah.
it's like when you walk into Walmart and there's the security camera and the monitor looking at you, smile, you're on
Right.
camera. That's what it's like every time he's being surveilled. He can always see the camera and the like monitor.
It's like when Zoom records you and goes, the meeting is now being recorded.
Right.
So Ethan races against traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Oh,
drives,
that's right.
he
That's the
drives
bear
to a
trial.
highway and it's just like you have to drive against traffic for 5 minutes.
You can't die during this sequence,
You can't.
which is bizarre because Ethan can die.
Yeah,
He
Ethan
sure
can
can
die in
later.
other chapters.
Just not
yeah.
yet.
Just not
Yeah.
yet. That's actually one of the big things that like everyone touts as sort of like this revolutionary thing for Heavy Rain is that any one of the protagonists can die at any time. You could, I think, there's an ending where everybody but Scott dies, right?
Yeah.
There is actually, like
a total
deaths
failure.
can and do happen in ways that's like, yeah, the game's just going to keep going, which I totally respect. But there's far more occasions like this or anything with Shelby where it's like, no, this death's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the bear sequence is also really difficult because it's a gray, cloudy day, and all of your prompts for the QuickTime events are grayed out entirely.
Yeah.
Is this a choice or is it just the game being fucking annoying?
It's just annoying.
I think it's just
Yeah.
annoying. It doesn't really lead to any sort of artistic point.
The
ultimately.
weirdest thing that it does is it alternates between using the right stick and using the motion controls to steer around
So,
the traffic.
what
and
happens
also, if you're playing this game as just a general rule, play it on
As
easy
Prompto.
mode. Yeah, play it as Prompto. But play it on easy mode because any of the harder modes, you start getting into like more complicated button presses that just sometimes don't work.
Sure.
And the game is much more enjoyable if you have to press as few buttons as possible.
So what ends up happening then at the end of this bear trial?
He gets the SIM card and he gets another. Well, first of all, he flips the car explodes.
Okay.
And he gets the SIM card. You have to escape like the flaming car. And you get the SIM card, you put it in, and it starts to reveal an address that is so clearly, almost immediately, something Roosevelt. And instead of like trying to research what,
and I think it like starts with an
are.
11, so like you actually have a lot of clues right at the very beginning that you don't utilize at all.
Yeah, you just have to go through all the trials in order to get all the things in the order, even though you as the player are like, it's Roosevelt Avenue. Like it's so clearly Roosevelt Avenue.
So that's one trial down, what, 4 to go?
Yeah. So then you go to this warehouse, you crawl over glass.
Right.
Yes, that's
You walk through some electrical pylons.
glass.
And again, if you fail this one, you just, like, if you get hurt enough, it doesn't kill you. It just makes Ethan go out the door that says coward.
Yeah,
and
it's the no-no door.
So you can actually not complete some of these, which could have been interesting, which can mean that Ethan doesn't find the address.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
The third one is the most Saw one of them, where you have to cut off the tip of your finger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And you have different ways
gets
of
real.
Yeah, you
You have to like find implements around the house, and you can cauterize, you can disinfect, you can whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You just have to cut it off.
Yeah, and I think there could have been an interesting thing, like if you didn't like cauterize the wound or if you didn't disinfect it, that you would like actually slowly get infected over the course of the game. That could end up with him dying.
But every time you get hurt and you finish a trial, you come back and Madison treats your wounds at the motel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's their sole purpose in the game.
Yeah, of course. Again, they all of these women just serve as accessories to the male protagonists in some way, shape, or form, either to advance or block their objective.
Because then there's one where you have to kill a guy.
Oh.
So
you kill the other
go and
father.
kill a guy.
Yeah.
Wait, he's a father, but he's a drug dealer.
He's a shark. It's the shark trial, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a shark trial, and he has a shotgun and
He's a
chases you
shark?
around his apartment, shooting
Like on
you.
Shark,
Yeah.
it's Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank.
It sure is.
It is Kevin O'Leary. Yeah.
You break into his
He's
apartment
he's
and kill
Canadian,
him.
so it makes sense.
and then your last one is that you have to drink poison that'll kill you in an hour.
Yeah.
In the 2001 room.
Right.
After the one where you join the triads, you have to evade the police too. You're in like this very not populated part of the city. There's not any pedestrians out on the street when you run away because of your ex-wife, the bitch.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't remember her name, and that sucks.
Yeah.
That deeply sucks.
They start going after you. They find your psychiatrist. You as Nam and Jaden watch the other guy beat up the psychiatrist, and then you go after Ethan, and then as Ethan you run away because Madison comes by somehow and she helps you, and you go from the least populated block in Manhattan
To the busiest
to the
train
most
station.
populated subway station in the world. And
There are
what's
people
weird
clipping through other people. It's so populated.
What's weird is that David Cage and the design team managed to predict the 2nd Avenue subway, because that's what the stop looks like. It looks like those top stops on the queue.
Oh, that's funny. But we are still in Philadelphia, technically, right?
Sure.
Question mark?
Sure.
I'll be
It
honest.
feels more like
Here's the thing. Also, at this point, again, all I'm doing is listening to the descriptions of this game, right? And at this point, just so you have a sense of where my head is at, I'm like, it has been painful to listen to just hearing what this is like. I can't even imagine how awful it must be playing this game. And having to experience it over the course of, like, how long is this game? Like 15 hours, maybe? Like, is-ish? 10, 15?
Maybe.
Yeah,
It's
10
not
to 15
super
hours
long.
if you go
But it is
fast.
very boring in a lot of places.
So, like, this sounds horrible. I
And
hate
you know
it.
what? The critics ate this shit up, Josh. Not all of them.
So when you cut your finger off, that's also the first point where an actual variable event can happen. You can get arrested.
Or not.
At which point, or you don't. You escape on the subway. But at which point, apparently, I've never gotten arrested.
I got arrested. What questions do you have about getting arrested?
But the detective, Don Jaden, he just rescues you.
Yeah.
But like doesn't ask you for like the fucking letters that you've managed to get from the origami killer yet.
Nope. He doesn't ask for any clues. He's just like, I know in my heart it's not him. I'm going to help him escape the police station.
Okay.
Ask not what
what Norman Jane can do for you. But what you can do for Norman Jane.
Right, Norman Kennedy.
So, there's 2 points where you can get arrested. And if you escape and then get arrested again, like then Ethan's just in prison for the rest of the game. I actually don't think there's an ending where he is dead, but he is in prison at least.
Okay.
He does.
Oh, no, there is an
he
ending
kills
where he's
himself
dead.
in prison.
So Madison starts investigating on her own. I don't even know how she's getting any of the information to go to any given place.
Well, she's a journalist,
know-
Brian. That's
Yeah.
the plot
Even
twist with
remotely
her
what's
is that
going
she's
on.
secretly a
So
journalist.
she
And you
goes
have to
to,
choose whether to forgive her or
I
not
love
for
those
being a
secret
journalist.
journalists. That's
Yeah, so she goes out to Queens, or Queens, Philadelphia.
yeah.
And she visits Colin Mockery at his house.
How dare you?
He's like this Dr. Feelgood. I don't know what whatever. So she visits
he
this
owns
Dr.
the
Feelgood.
building where he got his finger cut
Oh,
off. So
right,
they're trying
right.
to track down who got the lease for
Who-
the building.
who owns the buil-
Josh, is this thrilling? Does this
No,
sound
I
thrilling?
own it.
Or was
You
he
see my
leasing it
face
and then
right now?
subletting it?
Josh,
Yeah. So this stuff doesn't make
so
any
mad.
sense, and it makes even less sense that she would actually make it follow that line to him in the first place.
Yeah. It's just another excuse
so-
to put a woman in peril. Is really
So Colin
the point.
Mockery is a Dr. Feelgood, and he gives drugs to people or whatever. And she's like, I want some club drugs. I just love going to the club. And
And he's like,
doing
no.
drugs
And she's
there."
like, please. And he's like, sure, come on in.
And he's like, yep. And then he's like, by the way, have this wine. And then if you drink it,
You're drugged.
then he tries to cut you into little pieces in his
Wait,
basement.
who does this?
The doctor.
Colin Mockery.
Why?
Oh, the
From Whose Line
achievement you
Is It
get for
Anyway?
not drinking the wine, by the way, is called Clever Girl, and it made me so angry. It made me
Wait,
viscerally
but why?
angry.
Why?
What does that have to do with Jurassic
Why
Park?
does the
I mean,
fucking doctor?
that's the thing. That's the thing, Josh, is that all of the people that like you do end up chasing are terrible people. They're
Right.
just dead ends. Like that guy.
Yeah.
There's also the guy.
Right, it's just because David Cage wanted to put in
Yeah.
a couple other movies
Right,
in the middle
right,
of this
right,
movie.
right.
You can end up in the basement, and then he can potentially kill you.
Yeah, so then Madison is dead.
Sure,
for the rest
why
of the
not?
game.
Then she's
Sure.
just
We really
gone,
cared about
and,
Madison,
and
though.
it's
Sure.
it's like goodbye. We hardly knew you.
Josh, what is Madison's last name?
Beer, Madison Beer.
Great,
Oh,
yes.
very nice. Yeah.
Madison Page.
Yes.
Two first names.
Two first names.
Okay.
Beer is not a first name.
No, but
Bia Jaden.
Fuck you, beer is a first name.
Bia Jaden.
Because of the clues that Narzan has found on his own without using the help of the guy he may have imprisoned and then helped escape. Or, anything with Shelby, and we'll get to Shelby again later. But Norman ends
how
up
much later?
at this...
How much later?
Norman ends up at this lot.
However long, it's interminable.
However long it takes.
This gigantic scrap heap, owned and operated and staffed entirely by one man, one incredibly determined man, who greets you with the line,
Hey, Quacker! What you doing in there?
Yes.
Voiced by the same guy, the same white man who voices Hassan at the convenience store earlier.
No.
So to
Yeah.
give you a sense
Why?
of the
No.
man who provides the voice for this character,
Yes.
he looks like Louis C.K.
He sure does.
If Louis C.K. didn't cut his hair. Like, that's what he looks like.
I was listening to this man speak and say these lines, and David was in the room, and I turned to David and I said, what are the chances that this is a white guy doing this voice? And David said, the accent is a little broad.
I said the chances are 100%.
Which is like
it
saying that
definitely a white
Hindenburg
man.
was a bad day.
So of course, this is a game that still uses a lot of like traditional animation, but it does use a lot of performance capture for a lot of its scenes. It always loves showing in the behind the scenes sequence how many setups they use to film the dream sequence that Madison Page had. They probably did more work on that scene than anything
The
else
dream
in the
sequence
game.
where she gets stabbed
because-
that doesn't matter.
Yes,
That one?
yes.
Okay.
Because David Cage is a big pervert.
Yeah, but Brian, that scene had titties, so that's the only
Yes.
reason they spent all that time on that.
So that means that there are, some people who are just voiced by the same person over a few different things. They might have some different performance captures, and they might have different models. A lot of these characters are like scanned and not necessarily performed. So what you'll find in the credits is that there is a model credited for the body of Mad Jack, which is the name of this junkyard owner. His name is Frédéric Bindebong.
Okay.
Frederick Bindebong. Which, guess what happens when you type in that name into Google or Facebook or anything on the internet whatsoever,
I don't know if I want to know the answer, but let's find out.
you will find only things referencing this character in Heavy Rain because Frédéric Bandebon does not exist.
That's not a real guy. Okay.
He is not real, and neither is the model for Hassan. These are smoke screens.
These are memories that David Cage made up.
No, it's actually not racist.
Of minorities.
We didn't make a racist caricature. There's a real black guy. Don't ask me about him. He lives in Canada. But we also live in Canada. Ignore me. Ignore me, please, God.
There's a quote that we're going to get to from David Cage, which I think will help put a lot of his racial biases.
Oh, yeah. I'm excited
in context.
to get to that point because I saw that quote. It's fucking cool.
We're going to cover that when we get more into the Quantic Dream's toxic work environment.
Well, and I want to. How much more do we have to talk about with the game itself? Because I do want to make sure that we can spend a good bit of time talking about the creation of this game.
There's more going on. There's more going on. So
Junkyard Jones is a murderer. He's also a murderer.
How many fucking killers are there in this town?
That's what I'm saying.
Because
Matt Jack throws his victims in a vat of acid that he just has
and he doesn't
So he's also
hide
the
it.
Joker.
You just walk over to a corner of the garage and you just see a skull.
Yeah.
There's a skull floating in it.
So he's not even using hydrofluoric.
The old acid corner in the junkyard.
Yeah.
We all know it.
Well, I mean, I definitely have been in the acid corner before, but not that kind of acid corner, if you know what I'm saying.
I apprenticed at a junkyard and I worked exclusively the acid pit.
Yeah.
So then you get into a fight with him, and then if Norman Jaden loses this fight, he can either die or narrowly escape and kill Frederick Bindabong, or real human man, Frederick Bindabong.
Noted real guy.
I assume it's the French-Canadian equivalent of naming a guy Jack Boobadoo. So if that happens, if you lose that first fight, Norman Jaden's journey is over. He's not going to be able to solve the rest of
He's not going to figure out who the origami killer is.
Yeah. But if you make it through and you get the answers from him and you arrest him properly, and the only way you do it is by taking the cocaine.
Oh.
You have to take the cocaine.
Yeah.
Once you win the fight,
Drugs
he
are
goes through
good.
like a whoa, and then you just have to take the cocaine, and then you're fine.
Drugs are good.
So then he gets arrested. You get your next little clue, which means that Norman Jaden and Madison Page are both about to go to the same place. Scott Shelby, in the meantime, has teamed up with that woman from the motel, and they go to this clockmaker's store.
This is the scene where the whole twist.
The scene where the game completely crosses the line into just absolute bullshit.
Yeah.
Because she hands him this letter, and Scott Shelby is like, this letter looks like it was typed up on an old typewriter. He says, standing next to his old typewriter.
He's actually leaning against the typewriter when he says
That's
this.
so good.
Well, it turns out to be a different typewriter, but that's so fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It does turn out to be.
they go to this antique clock guy who I guess is also a typewriter guy.
He's an old guy. He knows antiques.
Yeah,
He
so
was
you talk
around
to
when they
him,
were invented.
And he's like, well, I'm the only guy who repairs typewriters around here, so I'll just check my records to see who's repaired, who brought it in.
Keep in mind, you are in control of Scott Shelby for this entire sequence. There is not a single moment where Scott Shelby is out of your sight.
Sure.
And then he goes back, and then Scott's like, I'm going to check on him back there. And then he goes back there, the guy's dead, and the phone is off the hook, and 911 has been called, and a window is open. And Scott's like, fuck. He closes the window, and he hangs up the phone, and he's like, wait, I have to wipe my fingernails off. Fingernails?
He was cutting his fingernails and just strewing them about the watchmaker
Wait,
store.
I have to wipe my fingerprints off of everything. So then you have to go around and wipe your fingerprints off of everything, or the police get you, but they don't arrest you. You just have a small cutscene where the police officer is like, well, you should have just told us that someone got murdered there.
And they let you go.
Yep.
That sequence is actually, I think, very cool. And it's a thing that reminded me most of Indigo Prophecy, which is just you have to cover your tracks and you have to rack your brain to remember what the fuck did I touch in this room? Because if you miss anything, the camera will focus on it at the end.
What I ended up missing was the door I came in.
That's cool if you're not the killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're playing the killer in this scene.
The game plays that scene completely as a straightforward thing, and they could have gotten away with it because Scott at this point is investigating this rich pervert kid who killed another child.
Okay.
And my memory of playing the game the first time, I think this is what I walked away from, was that the woman that you were with, the woman at the motel, the whole reason Scott was doing all of that stuff was because he was investigating the person who was the copycat killer, and that her son was killed by the copycat killer. But no, the kid killed by the rich kid copycat killer was some kid you never actually see in the story. You don't meet any of his family. It has nothing to do with anything. Scott Shelby goes and then he kills the rich guy and everything, and that's all done after they try to kill him, and then the lady maybe dies or whatever. That could have actually been Scott's whole plot, is just investigating the copycat killer. But instead, it's not. It just happens to be a side thing for this main thing of him investigating the killing that he did and faking you out on killing the typewriter guy. But the typewriter guy could have been killed by the rich kid. They could have just done that.
Right.
Instead, they didn't.
And this whole thing culminates, Ethan figures out where Shaun is being held, either through guesswork or drinking poison and getting the full address.
No, there's another thing we have to talk about here. A couple other things. Because Scott goes to this grave.
Oh, right. We got to do the backstory.
And then there's this dead kid.
AJ, your face now resembles my face. I love this.
Oh, God, I forgot
There's
about the
this
backstory.
dead kid, and then the rich guy whose son is the copycat killer, he leaves flowers at the dead kid's grave. That amounts to nothing, too.
He
It
owned
just
the construction
is a scene
site,
that happens.
yeah.
But then you get a flashback to the dead kid because the groundskeeper is like, "Ah, yes, I remember that day in 1978. And so then he goes and tells this story about Scott Shelby and his brother when they had different names, doing parkour together. And then Scott Shelby's brother gets caught under the water. And you see him get caught under the water, and then it just cuts away. And the groundskeeper is like, and then he died.
You later do watch him drown.
God, how many more ways did they have to like tell the same beats of the same story multiple times over and over again? Like, this just sounds like a fucking mess. Like,
And then as Madison, you go to the nightclub that Colin Mockery, I guess, had a ticket to. Who knows?
Oh,
but
God,
you
the
get there,
nightclub.
and then you strip for Louis C.K. actually playing a character that's modeled after him. Canadian Louis C.K., I guess.
you
That's
strip.
what
She
the
takes.
C stands for.
She takes her
It's
clothes
Louis
off.
Canadian.
Somebody who's like a cross between a Mexican and like maybe he's also Spanish and also Portuguese. But he's speaking.
I wrote my note that says, I know there's no specific way that Latin American people or Latin American descended people should look, but why is this drug lord being played by Philip Seymour Hoffman?
Louis C.K. was born in Mexico, so
Oh, well, there you go.
There you go.
Which is very misleading, his name being Louis Canadian.
But my favorite thing is that when you investigate this guy, because then Norman Jayden shows up after you do that stripping scene. The origami killer kills Louis C.K. Norman Jayden has a fight with the origami killer, which is where he gets his final clue to be able to figure everything out.
Right, and the origami killer does not actually have Scott Shelby's physical build in that scene.
No,
'cause
he's
they don't-
slightly thinner.
Totally
yeah.
different body model.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
He wears a girdle when he goes out as the shadow.
Yeah, but then when they replay the sequence later to reveal that it's him, it's his same body model again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you fight with that thing again. Yeah, they cheat. When you examine the dead body of maybe Mexican, maybe from Lisbon, Portugal, Louis C.K. When you scan him, it says that he was born in Boston. Then there's a motel chase. That's probably the most fun that you'll have in this game.
Yeah, you do have sex with Madison first. Ethan and Madison can have sex.
Yeah, if you want.
That's all great. Cool.
Yeah, on the floor. They don't go to the hotel bed.
They're
just on
great.
the ground.
Awesome. Love it.
Upsetting.
But the motel chase is cool. I like it. I think it's very well done.
And then you jump off a hotel roof and don't break your legs. So good on him. He did a Zelda roll at the end.
So Scott and Lauren, they end up in a car. Scott kills all the rich people and his guards. The scene where Scott mows everyone down with his gun too, you're just pressing the circle button the whole time.
Whole time. Just one button.
And then Madison finds out about an old lady. This old lady ends up being Scott Shelby's real
Why?
mom, and she has dementia. I don't know how Madison finds this part out at all.
They just introduce a brand new guy.
So Scott, who is, again, the only American voice actor, when he's a child, he's, of course, Quebecois. Doesn't speak a lick of English, getting through those lines as phonetically as possible.
All the children have nightmare teeth, by the way, too.
His mom, who was
Just
American
absolute
when she
nightmare
was
teeth.
young, she's now British.
Okay.
And she's so British that even the electrical wall plugs behind her in her bed in this nursing home, they're also British.
Well, she has Alzheimer's, Brian.
Yeah.
She doesn't remember.
She remembers the plugs
She doesn't remember her
incorrectly.
accent.
And so then you have to find clues around the room, and then she'll eventually give you the name Scott Shelby, but you, the player, won't know that yet.
Yeah. It's whispered to Madison, and
then her eyes get big.
why?
And her eyes
does
get big.
that
It's a
cut
big
straight
shot.
to?
Oh my
But it's
God.
Is that when
also-
Scott burns everything?
But it also doesn't mean anything to Madison.
This
Scott
is-
Shelby
no, of
is a
course not.
meaningless name.
This is such
just
a
means someone that she
bad-
can look up,
Just
I
from
guess.
a dramatic
Yeah.
perspective, this is so fucking inept. Like the
Yeah.
construction of all of this, it doesn't make sense. It's gesturing toward the existence of some sort of coherent plot or some sort of coherent twist by somebody who doesn't understand how to structure a narrative.
Right.
So again,
Yeah.
this is a relatively short game.
I feel like we've been talking about it for 10 hours.
Well, Josh, here's the thing. This is the
Well,
trial.
listen.
This is one of the Origami Killer's trials.
This is the peacock.
Right.
This game does not take a lot of hours to beat, and also the actual challenge of it is low, right? If you fail, even in the cases where failure actually exists, the game keeps going.
Right.
Right? You don't replay anything.
Yeah.
Less than half of players beat this game.
Huh.
Less than half
That's
stay through to the end.
incredible.
By beat,
Wow.
by
Of a
beat,
game that's pretty much on autopilot.
by beat, you just mean complete in any way, shape, or form. You got
Finishing
the final
it up.
trophy.
Just
Yep.
finishing the game.
Yep.
Yep.
Which the game doesn't really judge. I mean, it really does work as a game where you get to the end. And it can happen in any configuration. Madison ends up at Scott Shelby's apartment, and then he blows it up, and then she narrowly escapes, maybe, or she dies. You can actually hide in the refrigerator like Indiana Jones.
That's funny.
Once you're out, Madison picks up her cell phone, and she's like, I could call Ethan, or I could call...
Nom and
I could call the
Jaden.
detective, or I could, not call anyone. I think she must have died when I played because I don't remember having to make a call because Jaden didn't make it to there because of the racist scene. And
Right. But also, she had
she can
never
only
met
call
Norman
one.
Jaden.
She can't call both of them.
Yeah, and-
but so this time I
It's a
played through
burner
and
phone.
everyone made it
has
to the
limited
end.
minutes.
Yeah.
So there's any number of configurations with who makes it to the end, how the fight plays out. Scott Shelby could live. Scott Shelby could die. Any one of these good guy characters can die.
Well,
And then, and even Shaun could die,
I
right?
will say
Yeah.
that in terms of narrative design, it is somewhat challenging to account for all of those potential branching paths. Like that is a genuine challenge in narrative design.
Yeah.
But, and this is a really big but, you need to have some sense of where it is that you want to go and where you want to end up, you know?
And they figure it out by the end. By the last few chapters, there are choices that actually do keep going. And it's not just the bad ending. In Jaden's case, I think it kind of is the bad ending, where it's just like, no, you're wrong. Fuck you. Okay.
Yeah.
But other characters actually make it through or not, and it has an impact. But you have to get through. There are 50 chapters in this game.
Yeah.
Each scene is a
Jesus.
chapter,
Yeah.
and the last part is chapter 50.
Yeah.
50, half of 100.
It is way too many. And also, I don't know. By the time you get to the last scene,
There's a chapter where you just golf. You don't even golf. You just hit drives while having a conversation.
that
it
means
takes
nothing.
2 minutes.
That means that conversation could have been cut from the game. It means nothing.
Right.
It was
Yep.
just I want to
Because you
do a
had
golf
already
demo.
met the pervert kid. That's it.
they're-
Like that's all you need for
They're
that whole
clearly,
thing.
again, and we also interestingly talked about this a little bit, and so I feel like this is going to kind of pair nicely with our no cartridge episode that's releasing as well.
Yeah.
This also is a game that it sounds like really suffered severely from the lack of an editor. Like there was nobody to take the narrative to pull it in and be like, do we really need this?
Well, and what's wild is that knowing about the supernatural elements, they did have an editor, and they did pull a whole bunch of things in, because that was a whole elaborate aspect of all of this. And I think that David Cage is sort of like Dan Aykroyd with Ghostbusters, where he's like, he wants to write about like quantum coupling of human spirits because he thinks it's a real thing. Like how when Dan Aykroyd talks about Ghostbusters, he's like, I hope that when people watch Ghostbusters, they really get to walk away with the truth that ghosts are real.
Yeah.
He doesn't have Harold Ramis to edit him.
Right,
Who's
right,
like,
right,
Make this a workplace comedy.
So you
that's-
need to have jokes, actually.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things where, like, with David Cage and this thing, you find out that Scott Shelby was there when you got hit by the car.
Yeah, he
Not
was
necessary.
watching. Yeah.
Not at all. But in the original version, I guess it was because that's what entwined their souls
Sure.
and made Scott Shelby start killing kids, even though he already had the tragic parkour backstory, which is really all you need. Parkour causes all kinds of horrible things
Yeah,
to happen.
it's true.
Parkour kills most kids.
Yeah.
A child dies of parkour every 10 seconds.
70% of all children die every year, and it's mostly parkour.
Yeah.
Just 50 cents a day could help us save a child from parkour.
If you subscribe to our Patreon, we will put every effort into making sure another Mirror's Edge is never made.
Exactly right.
So we reached the end of Heavy Rain, and we also
Wait, but
finally
we didn't
get-
actually talk about like how it really ends. Like we've come to the end, but
yeah.
Well, it ends a number of different
It
ways.
Yeah,
depends
there's
on
so
how
many
you
endings.
perform
Okay.
in the final thing. Yeah.
So it ends with you defeating Scott Shelby as any one of the other three characters. If the happiest ending where everyone finds their thing, Norman Jaden starts seeing little virtual reality tanks wherever he goes.
coming into the real world, even
Okay.
when the glasses are off.
Madison and Ethan get married, and then they move into another firehouse
Yeah.
okay.
with Shaun.
Shaun!
You
Yeah.
never see your bitch ex-wife again.
That's true. Yeah, and there is an ending where Madison dies and Ethan lives, wherein he just moves in with Shaun to this apartment, and it's just got all these pillars. It looks like the worst apartment on the planet. Like, why would anyone live here?
Can Shaun die?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
can
which
drown.
I haven't.
Okay. Oh, right. Yes, he drowns because you don't get him out in time.
Any ending where Shaun dies, Ethan will kill himself.
Okay.
Yeah, Scott Shelby's dad would not help save the kid and was abusive and would hit them. And so Scott Shelby was searching for the perfect father. Like, that was his goal. So he'd kidnap these kids, put them in mortal danger, make their dads go through these terrible trials, which is why all the dads of all the other victims are dead or gone or missing,
Right.
is because they died doing the trials trying to get the kids
Okay.
back. When Scott Shelby happened to be at a mall, just looking out at the street with 9,000 other people around
Yeah,
him,
well, it was
and
National
saw,
Mall Day.
Yeah.
It was Mall Day. That's why it was full.
Yeah, bears were just there, just ripping people to
Right.
shit.
So
It was
many.
National
Ugh.
Mall Day. He saw a father leap out in front of a car to
Right.
protect his child, and that
kill his
was
child.
not proof enough to him that
Yeah.
Ethan Mars was a good father. So he had to kidnap the other kid.
Right.
But do so after kidnapping 6 or 7 other children before.
Yes,
I'll get
Also,
back
it's
to
like,
this guy.
So all of this was, I guess, practice just to get back to
Also,
Ethan.
by the way,
I
that
guess.
motivation. That doesn't make any sense at all.
No,
That's
why is he
extremely
killing the
fucking
kids?
stupid. That's so
Why is
dumb.
he killing the
He should
kids?
be
Just
killing
kill
the
their
dads.
dads.
Kill the dads.
all of these serial killer pulp things are always stupid. It comes with the territory.
Yeah, I know, but this one was
But
particularly
then,
dumb.
and then when Ethan goes and rescues his son, then Scott Shelby's like, I have a gun in your back right now. Also, I locked the grate, so fuck you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you can't save him
But
anyway.
he did the thing. He drank the poison. He killed the guy. He did
He everything
joined the
you wanted,
triads.
but no, still fuck you. I'm mad at my dad. And then, in like the best ending, you kick Scott Shelby on a conveyor belt into a thresher maw.
Hell yeah.
I guess, and he's just like
And this is an
obliterated.
abandoned warehouse, but all of the machinery is up and
So you
running.
basically do the wood chipper from Fargo to him.
Yep.
Yes, and also you can have an ending where Nam and Jaden gets thrown in, and Scott Shelby actually escapes and gets off scot free, and goes to visit his
Scott-free.
young brother.
Free.
Scott.
Yeah.
Free.
Yeah. Scott Shelby free. But none of the endings really matter except for, maybe people will disagree
the
with me on
one
this.
where he gets away with it and then he gets killed on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
There's that one. No, I was talking about Madison's one, which I think is the most infuriating, where she writes a book about her experience in the game. And Josh, guess what the title of the book is?
Heavy Rain.
It's Heavy fucking Rain, baby. And while she's
it.
doing
I love
signings at a table, another serial killer comes up and greets her, and it's a tease for like Heavy Rain 2, Madison Page's Revenge, I guess.
Rain heavier.
Yeah, it was. I guess that was probably going to be one of the canceled DLCs, but yeah, that was the one that pissed me off the most.
The first DLC, the one DLC, Run DMC, was
Run DLC is very
I like Run
the
DLC.
taxidermist, which just sounds like they did a redo of the Colin Mockery chapter. So I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't play it.
Cool.
I mean, we'd already endured enough. So that is Heavy Rain. That is the game of Heavy Rain.
My God.
And you have now
Worth
made
it?
it through the
Worth
Peacock
it.
trial, which means we can now give you a little bit of the SIM card.
Whose idea
that will
was
lead
it?
you towards.
Whose idea was it to play Heavy Rain? It wasn't mine, right?
It was mine.
Okay, cool.
It was mine.
I would have just felt bad if I was the one inflicting more psychic damage on all of you, because I feel like I've done a bit of that in the past.
And then you chose not to play it.
And then you chose not to play the game,
'cause I
which
didn't
is a
want
valid choice. In Heavy Rain logic, that's a valid choice, is to walk away.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
you
The only-
took the coward's door, Josh.
No, it's like war games. The only way to win is not to play.
I want to read something very quickly here. It's very, very short. I've spent a couple of nights with Heavy Rain now, and I think it's really special. If you're a parent, especially a dad, this game can be pretty difficult to play at times. In fact, I'm curious if people who don't have kids will end up getting as much out of it.
We didn't.
I don't know if it's an 89.85% or a 9.7 out of 10. What I do know is that after a late night playing it, I sneak into my son's room and hug him before I go to bed.
No,
I
come
think
on.
Heavy
That's
Rain-
nice, David. That's
No,
nice.
don't do that.
It's nice.
Don't do
no.
that. We wake them up
Don't-
first.
don't
Let them
hug-
know I'm gonna hug you.
Don't hug your
oh.
kids.
Children's
No,
rooms.
don't hug your kids.
Just don't dare do it.
Don't touch them. Don't touch them.
Don't touch your kids.
I think Heavy Rain is probably one of the most important games ever made.
Wow.
Wow.
Maybe not one of the best, but definitely important.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow. I can
That's
say
from,
Who quoted that? Who was that, Brian? Who said
That's
that?
Penny Arcade's own Gabe
oh wow.
from 2010.
I would have bet money that you were reading David Cage's review of his own game.
I love that you think that David Cage would give his game a 9.7 and not a 10 out of 10.
But you can always work for more. You can always do more to, achieve.
the
You can
rain
achieve
could be
more.
heavier.
This game was almost perfect. It was almost perfect, but we had a couple too many faggots working on it.
Well, I can say as someone with no kids, I had a hard time playing the whole game. So, yeah.
None of us have kids, and we had a hard time.
Yeah. So I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, let's
But that was the response. I liked the game.
Yeah, right.
back
You
then.
said that's what
I played
that
it
was what
for the
surprised
first time,
me.
and I thought,
I remember.
And you weren't-
dang, this is neat.
Yeah.
And you weren't alone, Brian. Some of the when I had to watch
I didn't think it was successful all across the board, and there were parts where I was like, is what's going on right now very racist?
but there's people
But for
who
the most part, I
emotionally
fell into the traps
yeah.
of like, this is sophisticated storytelling.
Yeah.
This is an adult story.
And there's
coming
people
from a
who
video
emotionally
game.
resonated with it. When I had
Yeah.
to watch I didn't play it through multiple times to see all the endings. I just looked them up on YouTube. And all the comments, almost all the comments are like, love this game. This game, this montage brings me back. And it's like, really? People got emotionally invested? How?
What's interesting is
In
I
what?
don't think Heavy Rain encourages you to play it again, which I thought was actually kind of
No,
fascinating.
unless you want to
It
platinum
wants you to get the ending that you're gonna get.
Yeah. If you want to platinum the game, you can. I set out to
Yeah.
do so, and there
That's
is
a bad
a
idea.
route
You
you
shouldn't
can
do
do
that
it.
with any game.
But I got stuck because the bear trophy just wouldn't click because you have to get every single timing thing perfectly, and it's basically memorization. Like you have to memorize an entire string of commands, and I did that. I did it perfectly 3 times. It did not pop for me. I know someone's going to come after me and say, "Well, you just didn't do it right. Fuck you! I did it right 3 times."
You did it right. The motion control shouldn't be.
I also
there.
don't think that I don't think that our fans are going to get upset with you for not playing Heavy Rain correctly.
That's true, but
Get good
But
at
also,
Heavy Rain.
here's how I justify it to myself. The platinum trophy for Heavy Rain is called Heavy Rain Master, and I did not want that title. I don't want that on my soul.
I do want that on my tombstone, though.
Speaking of Heavy Rain, or the master of Heavy Rain, I think it is important that we talk about David Cage himself, especially about the work environment that he created over his many years running Quantic Dreams. He still is running Quantic Dreams. As far as I know, his Star Wars
Quantic
game is still
Dream.
coming out.
It's the
Just
singular
one dream.
Quantic Dream. Yeah.
Just the single one. I guess we can start by saying that these are all allegations, and it was recently in French court. Take that.
which is inherently less serious than regular court.
It's very silly.
It's kind of like college
still
and
have
clown
ways.
There's a lot more
college. You got
mimes.
court and French court.
It's because it's so fun to say kangaroo in a French accent.
Kangaroo.
Kangaroo court.
He says kangaroo court. Well, actually, David Cage did have a breakdown on the stand where he stamped his foot, screamed, and then ran out of the witness box when confronted with these allegations. It says this whole thing has like ruined his reputation, and he threw this big ol' hissy fit.
I like to call that the behavior of an innocent man.
David, that's like shades of R. Kelly's interview with Gayle King, right?
Yeah.
That's how you act when you are, accused of a wrong thing.
Yeah.
Is you freak out and run away.
Especially when the
Sure.
accusations seem to be built around you being like a petulant tyrant with a very erratic personality.
I hear you freak out at the slightest point of offense. No!
Fuck you! No one tells you that. I am leaving now.
Allegedly.
I'm surprised he didn't talk about his beer drinking buddy Squishy at any point. What the fuck was that? What was his name?
What was his name?
Squibby?
Brett Kavanaugh's buddy.
Squee. Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't start screaming about Squee.
That's for whenever I make that Brett Kavanaugh video. Squee is actually like at the center of that.
Yeah,
whole
Squee's a major character that was really overlooked in that whole thing.
Similarly, the name of an innocent party.
Absolutely.
Squeeze.
I apologize.
Well, innocent at least in that context.
For my butchering of this, but I think the CEO of Quantic Dream, a guy whose name is very French and I'm going to horribly mispronounce it, but I think it's Guillaume de Fondemier.
His name, AJ, is Frederic Bandebon.
Yes. So the CEO, Frederic Vanderbong.
Frederic Vanderbong. I like this.
He was real
Judge
this
now.
whole time. Frederic Bindebong.
Frankie Billabong. Frankie Billabong over here.
He was their surprise witness.
Hello, I'm Frankie Billabong. I modeled Junkyard Jock or whatever his name was.
Is that Basmark Lerman? Hey,
hello. Yeah,
Hello.
I'm Baz Luhrmann. This is part of my Red Curtain trilogy.
So they had, he got on the stand and they're like, did you encourage a hostile work environment? And he said, well, am I under oath? And they said, yes. He's like, oh, so I can't lie? And they said, no, you can't lie.
Yeah,
and
that's
he's
how
like, well, then I
court
have
works.
nothing to
Prefer it
say.
if you didn't, yes.
And he's
Again.
like, that I have nothing to say.
Again, the thought process of an innocent person.
Yeah. So
Wait, I can't lie?
the
The
allegations.
guy who's just doing great. That's the thing. That's what I'm hearing is that like this man, he's winning.
They run a tight ship.
Well, he kind of just figured that going into
He's got
court
swag.
would be just like a Quantic Dream game where in order to testify correctly, all he had
has
to
to make
do
a choice.
was like push circle at the right time,
Yeah.
Or if he said nothing, the world would make the correct decision for him.
Exactly.
If I just wait long enough, this court trial will be dismissed.
And if he wants to reach for the microphone, you can kind of reach for it and then stop and then kind of reach for it again and then stop and then finally get it right and pull it towards you. Allegedly, he said, in my games, all women are whores.
Oh,
And
okay, cool.
at Quantic Dreams, we do not make games for fags. Were the two statements that he made. And then in response to that, he had this to say. I'm not going to dead name Elliot Page, so I'm just imagine that he does. Quote, you want to talk about homophobia? I work with Elliot Page, who fights for LGBT rights. You want to talk about racism? I work with Jesse Williams, who fights for civil rights in the USA. Judge me by my work.
To bring up Elliot specifically, too, is such a fucking slap in the face because, like I mentioned before with Madison Page's character model, and there being more to that model than what was depicted in game, following, I'm sure, a contract with a clause around the nudity.
Yeah.
There was the same thing with Elliot Page and his character's character model, which turned out had a lot more mapped onto it than, again, what was agreed upon.
Oh, fuck.
And that combined with The Last of Us stealing his then likeness turned him off to, I think, ever making a video game ever again.
Oh, for the character of Ellie in Last of Us?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That was based on him.
Because that character had a different model. And then, I don't know, at some point, Beyond Two Souls was coming out. And it seemed like Naughty Dog was like, what if we just confused people who wanted to buy the David Cage game?
Yeah. It should also be mentioned that, again, allegedly, there was a very toxic work environment made at Quantic Dream. It was very bro kind of place. They would often take pictures of employees they didn't like and Photoshop their bodies onto porn stars' bodies and also onto Nazis, confusingly, and would just post them around the office for everyone to see. And that kind of...
They put them onto the bodies of Nazis because they didn't like them?
Yes.
Because Nazis can't take a joke.
Yes.
I bet it's like, oh, I said, oh, your mother's so fat, and he couldn't take it, so I put his face on a Nazi because they don't get it.
This doesn't line up with the Quebecois people that I have met.
Yeah. So it's
That's
actually,
fucking awful.
it's just a terrible thing to say. Judge me by my work. Okay, great.
Right.
So you're
I'll
racist.
do
So
it,
you're
bitch.
racist and sexist.
Right.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Great.
You know,
Done.
I'm just basing that on your work. You know, we
not
don't have
even
to
all
say
these comments. It's just
Yeah, we don't even have
what
to
we've
say
seen in Heavy
anything.
Rain.
Allegedly, it's like, judge me by my work. Great, I'm doing that, and you suck.
Yeah, he is. I am not a fan of David
No.
Cage. I was talking to David about this earlier, but it feels like
You were talking to David Cage about this earlier?
I was talking to David Cage about this earlier. I'm like, dude, you gotta stop. You gotta fucking
And then
stop.
he started calling you slurs.
He did. He just started screaming at me. But no,
I didn't even know that there were specifically biphobic slurs. But
He performed, somehow slurred you and performed bi erasure on you simultaneously.
yeah, it was very weird.
He drew a picture of you on a Nazi, and then he started to erase you. It was literal by erasure.
And then I looked at my hands and I was fading out of time like in Back to the Future. And I'm like, no, by erasure. I think that Heavy Rain might be the straightest video game that's ever been made. I think that and that's saying something in a genre that is so straight. I mean, maybe what was that zombie video game where you can ride a motorcycle? Days Gone. I think
Days Gone,
that's also pretty
which was
aggressively
like supposed
straight.
to be the non-gay Last of Us. I'm pretty sure that's
Oh,
like what the
that
developers
one.
set out to
Yeah,
be.
I
Yeah.
remember that. Like all of
It's
the
like an open world. Yeah.
all of the people who were like, "Well, The Last of Us is so SJW. I'm gonna play Days Gone."
Yeah, and it's just garbage. But
It was originally supposed to be called Gays Gone, and it was going to be a game where there was no conflict.
Gays done. They switched the D and the G. As in, you got get out of here.
get out of here.
Get out of here.
But they everything that's wrong with Heavy Rain can be attributed to its lack of camp or self-awareness, and I think like had it been added in, it would have at least been an interesting and fun experience if it like really like reveled in the gruesomeness. But it takes itself so fucking seriously. This is a big adult story for boys.
And I think that everything that's wrong with Heavy Rain is everything that was like wrong with the industry at this particular point in time. It all sort of comes out.
But-
This. It's everyone who's like really mad about Roger Ebert, and they want a game that's not for fags.
Right.
Right.
They want a game that's actually a movie, but not a Kojima movie, because again, a little too fake. And
the thing about that too, though, Brian, is you say the industry at the time, but we just to like pull back a little bit and talk about where things stand right now. None of this has gone away. Obviously, if we
no, I just think it's specific to those like the specific neuroses of that moment.
Because
where
also-
they want to be taken seriously.
Also around this time, you have Duke Nukem Forever finally getting released for some reason. Which largely was because Randy Pitchford, also a huge noted piece of shit,
That's right.
wanted
Right.
to get it shipped, right? So Gearbox just bought the
thing
code and
about
got
Randy
it done.
Pitchford is that he has balls of steel. Blow it out, sure.
So, but I mean, looking.
Why is George Takei here?
The big story right now in gaming, or at least one of them, is what is going on and has been going on with Blizzard. How there was that fucking the Bill Cosby suite or whatever, where there were a number of men in senior management or near senior management at Blizzard who would regularly get together and just be bros. And one of the things that they would do is when they were at like a hotel, they would get a suite together, and it would colloquially be referred to as the Bill Cosby suite. They thought that was a really funny joke.
And they had a picture of
Jesus.
Bill Cosby they would put up on the wall and pose with it.
Oh,
And the whole
fuck.
idea is that they'd get as many women as they could to get up there. They had just like gallons
many
of
of whom
alcohol.
were Blizzard employees.
Yes.
That is something that's still ongoing, the fallout from that. Blizzard is in real tough shape right now. Their workers are not happy with them. In Overwatch, then this is a very dumb tokenistic thing that they did, but whatever.
Yeah,
they
course.
renamed a character, the character of McCree, who was actually named after a guy named Jesse McCree, who was one of the residents of the Cosby suite. They have now renamed
I didn't
the character.
know why that name change happened.
But at the
Fucking
end of the
Christ.
day, all of this is still optics, right?
Yeah.
There's not a desire.
Well, yeah, none of the things that were wrong got addressed. Like the things that those, like I said, this was about specific neuroses of the time, but all those things just continued
Yeah.
and continued along, especially this path where like someone gets to be seen as a genius.
Yes.
Someone like fucking David Cage is seen as a genius.
Yeah.
That's how this industry that's so desperate to be taken seriously at this point in time, that's how serious that they get, is they think David Cage is some fucking luminary.
And the other thing that happens too is that in the cases where individuals are or groups of individuals, because it's never just one person, right? Like
No, it's structures.
It's structures.
It's
the
structural.
rot exemplifies itself in these terrible individuals, but then frequently speaking, what companies will do is they will point to a bad apple or two and be like, yeah, we got rid of that guy. We got rid of that guy. So obviously we're fine now.
He got rid of his namesake in the game.
Right. Exactly. And it's bullshit. It's nothing but bullshit.
And how much of this has everything to do with the fact that workers in gaming have absolutely no power whatsoever.
Exactly. No union.
Right? You look at all this stuff that was going on with Cyberpunk, that wasn't even remotely unusual because it was happening even more so at like Rockstar with Red Dead Redemption
and that's the
2.
thing. Like what was going on with CD Projekt Red was bad, but it's honestly not even the worst of it. Like when it comes to
The Last of Us 2.
Yeah, anything.
Right? The SJW game.
All the big, commercial studios, whether you're talking about, like you said, Rockstar North. I mean, I could just keep listing studios. You know what I mean?
Really just about any game.
Any AAA
Crunch was so
developer,
normalized. I remember watching a documentary back in the days of G4 when they actually had some production budget.
G4's coming back, by the way. Did you see that?
I saw that. They would do these documentaries, and one of them that they did was one on Tim Schafer that they decided to film during the last couple weeks of development of Psychonauts.
Yikes.
Where they were in crunch.
Yeah.
And the whole documentary is about being in crunch and just how ordinary that is. Even as far back as 2003?
Right.
Well, in one doc that I would definitely recommend to any of our listeners is the documentary that NoClip did about Hades, because it is a great example of what it looks like when you actually do halfway decent project management and don't have to crunch because you have a plan for what the design of the project is going to look like.
And you get one of the greatest games of all time
right
out of it.
Yeah. And then we were also seeing this too, right, recently with the developer of Gone Home and how the director of that, we don't really, I've wanted to talk about it a little bit. We haven't actually gotten that much concrete information on any of that.
Yeah.
But like clearly there was a problem there because again, the power of these people is not kept in check.
Right.
And that's the only thing that stops it. It's not like you can't depend on the individual morality of people who produce AAA video games or even
well,
big
because
level
to that
independent
point
games.
as well, you can
that's not how it
have
works.
perfectly. Like obviously somebody like David Cage or Michel Ancel or these fucking assholes over at Blizzard, they are bad people. But you can also be a perfectly decent, well-meaning person who is in a position of power or management inside of a system that is poorly structured, that doesn't empower its workers. And you can be the nicest guy in the world and it will not fucking matter. The outcome will still be difficult for the workers.
And you know what? Sometimes at the end of that crunch, you end up with a 20-hour game that relies almost entirely on buying the fact that a serial killer uses rainwater to kill children. And is that worth it?
Everyone will love it.
And everyone will fucking love it. They'll give you a Star Wars game. Willem Dafoe will be in your game. Somebody's got to talk to Willem Dafoe about doing video games. He only picks bad projects,
I respect it. No, whenever I see an actor who's really great and only does bad things, like Ben Kingsley, Willem Dafoe,
Adam Sandler, with the exception of Uncut Gems.
Yeah, Samuel L. Jackson. It's just like, great. This is perfect.
If you want like a really bad good time, go watch the David Cage interviews where Willem Dafoe is forced to sit next to him and just listen to everything. And the camera just like slowly zooms in on Dafoe's face and you just see the light completely gone from his eyes. It's almost like he's wearing the Green Goblin mask without wearing it. Do you know what I mean?
You watch him dissociate.
Wow.
Yeah.
it's
you see
he's
him
just thinking about all the good times he used to have. All the good times he used to have at the Wooster Group or working with Scorsese.
David, thank you so much for, taking the time to play the game again for one thing.
Replay this game.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I will never forgive you, AJ, for making me play it again.
Yeah.
I know we don't have a lot of the things going on these days, but do you have something going on that you want to plug?
Oh, I have a podcast.
Hey.
It comes out every Friday. It's me
Every
and my
Friday.
friends.
It's fucking great, by the
Tessa
way.
Flannery and Cameron Faring. They're awesome. We met in New York a decade ago. We're all recently out members of the queer community. So
You've all come out as Canadians.
Ottawa specifically. Shout out to Ottawa kids if you have any Canadian listeners.
I heard it
Lost
when
them
you.
by now. If
I
we
actually
haven't,
heard
oh
it,
God.
David, when you said Ottawa. I heard like that was yes.
You heard my accent come through?
Just for a moment.
But yeah, it's basically pop culture and stuff like that. But through the lens of like, oh yeah, we were probably kind of queer all along and just didn't realize it.
And David, what's the name of this podcast?
I like that.
The title is Omni Bilateral Panic, and it's out every Friday where podcasts are available.
They got 5 episodes already
Let's
up.
say that one more time. Omni Bilateral Panic.
Correct. I'm the
make sure I was
bi
saying that
in the bilateral panic.
And there's a pan in the panic.
There's a panic, an
Oh,
omni.
okay. I was like, who's the lateral?
That is Scott Shelby.
It's
Oh my
always
God.
Scott Shelby.
Fuck! It's always Scott Shelby.
God damn it.
Damn it.
You know what David is in this case? Because I am the worst of all possible AJs.
Oh, I'm the worst of all possible Joshes.
And I am the worst of all possible Brians.
But David, I think you might be the worst of all possible Nam and Jadens.
I am Norman Jaden. Thank you for having me. Oh, it's so great. I'm on the road to recovery from my drugs.
All right, kids. Use crack and cocaine
Have a
to
good
get
one.
high. See ya.
Using crack and cocaine to get high. That's what you say you love. But it's really insane. You could die. What are you thinking of?
All right, folks, if you want more, check us out on No Cartridge. We're on the episode that has released this very day. Anyway, we'd like to thank our sponsors for bringing you this episode, and our sponsors, no, are not crack and cocaine. They are the patrons at Patreon who help us buy our crack and cocaine, the energy drink, which makes my throat hurt, so I don't drink it. Anyway, they are Aeneas Hemphill, Andrew Kilroy, Ari Rodriguez, Ben Ferber, Benjamin R. Alford, Bill Corby, Dave Scolard, Davis Vandestieg, Dominic Russo, JV, Nate Netzley, Nell Johnson, Octavia Immersive, Olivia Hernandez, Tony Diddy, with a special thank you to Trevor Strunk, Ashley Stoneman, Hannah White, Sam Borman, and Timmy Sexton. All right, folks, don't get caught in the rain. If you like pina coladas. It's by Rupert Holmes. Did The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Broadway musical.
There
Based
is
on
help
Dickens.
available for people who have a problem with cocaine or crack addiction. Have them call 1-800-COCAINE for advice. And if someone ever offers you crack or cocaine, be smart. Just say no. 'Cause nobody's needing that crack and cocaine. There's terrible trouble behind it. And sooner or later you're burning your brain, making a mess of your mind. 'Cause nobody's needing that crack and cocaine. There's terrible trouble behind it. And sooner or later you're burning your brain, making a mess of your mind. 'Cause nobody's needing that crack and cocaine. There's terrible trouble behind it. And sooner or later you're burning your brain, making a mess of your mind.